Regular meeting number 61 will now come to order. Please stand for the playing of the national anthem. Councilmember Favor, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, council is grateful to have our pastor, Pastor Fred Lamar of Family Missionary Baptist Church, back to pray with us. Pastor, welcome back to council.
Thank you, counsel. Let us pray. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou wast by thy might led us into this light. Keep us forever in this path, we pray. God, a path that has led many to public service. Lord, we pray for all those here, the president, pro temp, and every member of council, God. Help us to understand the prophet Micah 6 and 8. What does the Lord require of us? To do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. Give us your favor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, De Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden. Any person who takes any actions to obstruct or interfere with the conduct of tonight's meeting may be charged with disturbing a lawful meeting pursuant to Columbus City Code 2317.12. Any person who enters those areas of city council chambers reserved for city officials or invited guests may be charged with criminal trespass pursuant to Columbus City Code 2311.21.
Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, De Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Are there any additions or corrections to the journal? Hearing none, the journal is approved. This week's communications received by the city clerk's office are listed on the agenda and we publish in the bulletin. Are there any other communications to be read into the record?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will go around the dais for updates from my colleagues, starting with Councilmember Bangston.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. First, I will have our Director of Technology come forward, Director Orth, just to give us an update regarding the ongoing cybersecurity incident. And just a status update. And with that, Director, I will turn the floor over to you whenever you're ready.
Good evening, President Harden, President Pro Tem Dorans, Chair Bangston, and members of council. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to update you on our efforts in response to the cyber attack since our last update on November 25th. Addressing the incident continues to be our top priority. I'm pleased to share that we've made significant progress, having hardened and remediated an additional 19 applications, bringing our total remediation to 90%. As we've emphasized, our most critical systems have been restored, and we remain focused on restoring all of our systems. We are now receiving Experian reports weekly, and I can report that as of today, we've seen a 27% increase in Experian enrollments and now have 21,272 enrolled. That's an increase of 4,573. We strongly encourage all city employees, residents, and anyone else impacted to take advantage of the service. This investigation into this act of cyber terrorism is ongoing. Consequently, and as a reminder to ensure everyone affected has sufficient time to enroll and experience identity theft and dark web monitoring service and cyber liability insurance, that the enrollment deadline has been extended to March 31st, 2025. To enroll, please visit columbus.gov/cyber. We also continue the rollout of our Workspace ONE platform, which provides remote access to city employees and users on their city-issued laptops and personally owned computers. And I'm happy to report that last week we started the rollout of our mobile email solution that provides city users the ability to access email on their smartphones. With your consideration and approval of Ordinance 3432-2024 this evening, DOT will be able to expand access to mobile email to an additional 1,000 city users. In closing, cybercrime remains a persistent challenge for governments, businesses, and individuals alike. We're committed to recovering from the incident, supporting those affected, and strengthening our systems to prevent future attacks. Thanks, as always, for your ongoing patience and support through the process. This concludes my update. I'm certainly available to answer any questions that you have, keeping in mind the constraints of an ongoing investigation.
Thank you for that, Director. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? One question I just have, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but even after this attack that we experience, ongoing every single day, we are stopping attacks or attacks that are coming to the city. Can you just talk high level? I know you probably have numbers in front of you, but how many attacks have we thwarted since that last attack, or how many times have we been, attacked since that date?
President Harden, Chair Banks, and members of council, I don't know that I have that exact number since July 18th when this occurred. I've been asked a question before to talk about specific attacks throughout the year, and I think the point you made is really important. We are never not under attack. In 2023, last year, we reported in our budget testimony, we observed over 200 billion attempts into the city, and I believe of the 200 billion, 34 got through and they were active cyber incidents, but didn't raise to the level of certainly the one that we're going through right now. I can tell you that there have been and continue to be and will always continue to be forever ongoing attempts by cyber terrorists to attack our infrastructure, as generally is the case in our country. As I've mentioned, we continue to remediate and harden our systems to prevent them in the future. I will be able to get you a more specific number after testimony today, but there have been additional ones since July 18th.
No, I appreciate that. I just wanted to set the context that we have a cybersecurity team, that there's mitigations in place, that every single day that we are protecting the residents' data, and that that is something that we don't take lightly. So thank you again to you and your team. If there's no further questions or comments from my colleagues, thank you for the update. Next, President Harden, just want to provide an update on our upcoming hearings. With this being the last council meeting of the year, I wanted to just share those upcoming operating budget hearings. To date, we've had 3 operating budget hearings that covered the following themes: finance and governance, neighborhoods and sustainability, and safety and judiciary. The recordings of all 3 of those hearings can be found on the city's YouTube channel page. Next month, we are planning to hold 5 additional hearings, 2 of which are still in the process of being scheduled. The hearings we have scheduled are as follows. The Economic and Workforce hearing will take place on Friday, January 10th at 3 p.m. and will be co-chaired by myself and President Pro Tem Rob Dorrance. The Health and Human Services and Equity hearing will take place on Thursday, January 16th at 5 p.m. and will be chaired by Councilmember Melissa Green. And the Housing and Homelessness hearing will take place on Tuesday, January 21st, and that will be led by Council President Harden. Our Service and Infrastructure hearing, which will be co-chaired by Councilmembers Barroso de Padilla and Councilmember White, as well as our hearing discussing Councilmember amendments and the final budget, are in the process of being scheduled. So please keep an eye out on City Bulletin and council newsletters for any announcements for those hearing dates and times. For any questions or comments or requests for the upcoming hearings, please reach out to the respective chairs' offices. Also, the full proposed budget for 2025 can be viewed online. That's at columbus.gov/2025budget. All meetings will be live streamed on the city's YouTube channel and Facebook page. And I just want to take one point of privilege while I do have the announcements. I wasn't here last week and I was absent, but I wanted to make sure I went on the record to also thank Mike Brown, our Chief of Staff, who will be retiring at the end of this year for this tour of duty at City Hall. And I could tell you, as someone who was a young staffer and now someone who is a council member, he's someone that has helped mentor and guide me. And so really want to thank him for his years of public service to this building, to this community, and to every single resident in Columbus. So Mike Brown, wherever you are, I usually see him somewhere around here, but just want to let you know that thank you so much for your service to our community. And with that, Council President, that's all I have for my announcements.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Barosa de Padilla.
Thanks, Council President. Just want to say happy holidays to everyone, and just remind folks as it gets cooler and the temperature drops, if we do have snow, to remind folks that they can see live on our Warrior Watch where streets are being plowed and what is happening on your city streets. So just in case between now and when we come back in January, folks can stay most up to date. I also want to just thank our folks. In the past couple years, we've had our snow warriors working through the holidays and overnight to ensure that folks get to the places that they need to be safely. So I want to give them a thank you ahead of time for what may come during this holiday season. That's all for me. Thanks.
Councilmember Deakar.
Thank you, Council President. First, I'd like to thank everyone who participated in, attended, or viewed our Neighborhoods Recreation and Parks hearing last week. If you missed it, you can still view the video on the city's YouTube channel. And any residents who have questions or comments on the operating budget related to our committee, please don't hesitate to reach out to my office. And finally, thank you to all the amazing students who participated in the Martin Luther King Oratorical Contest. These kids were amazing. Little kids, I judged kids who were 8, 9, 10, and 11 years old, and also high schoolers. And these kids had so much poise to go stand up in an auditorium full of people and to give a speech from memory. It was just phenomenal, their skill level. The winners from the senior and junior levels will be delivering their orations at the city's annual Martin Luther King March and Program on Monday, January 20th, beginning at 3 p.m. at the Lincoln Theater. So mark your calendars. I hope you come out and support these amazing kids. And that's all for me, Mr. Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember. Press Pro Tem. Councilmember Favor. Councilmember Green. Councilmember Remy.
Thank you very much, Council President. This evening, I would just like to take a moment to pause and celebrate and honor the life of Bob Nunley, a cherished voice and presence in our community for over 40 years. For those of us that have been around for a minute, we remember Bob's calming voice in his early days on radio to his long trusted time as a trusted meteorologist at NBC4. Bob's warmth and dedication made him a trusted source of information and connection for Central Ohio. Beyond his professional accomplishments, Bob's passions for giving back was evident in his support for local charities, his advocacy for animal adoption, and his unwavering commitment to uplifting others. His legacy of kindness and community service will forever remain an inspiration to us all. So Godspeed, Bob. Godspeed. And as we close out our year on council with our 62nd meeting this evening on this dais, I want to wish my colleagues, staff, the administration, directors, and most importantly, the residents of the city of Columbus a very happy and safe holiday season. Thank you, Council President. That is all I have this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember White. Thank you. Well, as many folks have acknowledged, this is our last meeting of the year, but it's not just the last council meeting. This body is a living thing. It evolves. And at the end of tonight's meeting, it will be different forever. We are so excited, and we have been celebrating that our colleague, Councilmember Shayla Favor, who was elected the county prosecutor, this is her last meeting. And on behalf of a grateful city, on behalf of a council who we see each other more as family than just colleagues, we say thank you for the many policy wins, for the advocacy, for awakening in us an understanding of the burden of and the need for housing and affordable housing in our community. We say thank you. And so we just wanted to pause and make sure that we had this moment to celebrate a true advocate, a true servant, to thank her for her work, to thank her family for their sacrifice that they have made on behalf of our community, to thank her staff who have supported and buoyed and produced such great policy, but also just to say thank you. We are so grateful. We will miss you. You're just going down the street, but we are changing nonetheless, and it's kind of hard. I'm going to open up to my colleagues. Some of us spoke outside, but I know others certainly want to say a few words about our colleague. Anybody can.
I guess this is the blessing and the curse of being first, right? I guess you just have to go first. Well, I know that it's bittersweet for me, but also I'm really excited. And I thought about what I was going to say tonight, and I went through the fact that our relationship has blossomed and grown since me coming on the council. Since that first meeting where you tried to haze me and, I'm sorry, this is a non-hazing institution, I apologize, me and Laura Dess. But no, in all honesty, I think that you were always someone who was willing from the beginning, before I even sat in the seat, that was willing to have difficult conversations, was willing to say whatever you need, let me know, willing to be open to help guide through this process. But I said that I'm excited because, and I didn't want my remarks to be too political, but this is on my heart to say that when this past election occurred, I think many of us on this dais, the outcome was not what we expected. But there was another outcome that happened that night, that this community made history in electing the first African-American woman to lead our prosecuting office here in Franklin County. And I was at peace by that because when we think about protecting our democracy, that's not just a federal obligation. It's not just a state obligation. It's a local obligation as well. And to have you at the helm at a time such as this, I think is a sigh of relief for this community to know that we're going to have someone that is going to have our back, that's going to protect us, because that's what you've done your entire career. Whether it be from the time of you being a city attorney to what you have done around housing to protect our residents, still more work has to be done. And we will pick up that mantle and continue that. But I'm so excited for you to, not necessarily that you're leaving here, but you're going to a place where you are much more needed and that the work can continue to be there. And so for me, this is not goodbye. This is, I think, a journey of a new partnership of what it looks like to truly change the justice system. And I believe wholeheartedly in your vision and stand with you on that. But I just wish you well. Congratulations. You are the right person for this job at the right time in our community. And I'm excited for you. I'm so excited for you. But you've left us a lot of work to do. So with that being said, I'm going to suck it up and get back to work. But love you, love you, love you. Anything you need, you know you got it from me.
I've spoken many times, but it's going to be weird if I don't say anything. It'll be like on the cover of the Dispatch that there is like not good vibes, and I love you so much. I just want to say thank you, and thank you. I think the one thing that I haven't probably said enough is just thank you for setting the standard, and thank you for supporting me and both personally and professionally, and it's hard to sit here. It's certainly hard as a woman. It's certainly hard as a woman of color, and we held it down for like a whole year through some of the toughest times, and I will never forget that support, and I think that that shows your heart and your character, and I'm so excited for you. I've gotten over my sadness, and now I'm just living in the glee of your next.
I was a member of the newbie caucus. We've only had a year together. But looking back on your time here on the council, you just did this incredible heavy lift with housing. It is phenomenal what you have done. Other cities have not made the efforts that you have put into it, and it's just incredible, and our city is so blessed to have this work. And yeah, it's a heavy lift for all of us to continue that work, but now you're going into another office that needs an incredible heavy lift to make our prosecutor's office what it needs to be. And you are the person to do that. You have that work ethic, you have that heart to make that prosecutor's office something that we can be proud of, something where people know that when they're stepping into that space, that justice will be on their side. And thank you so much for stepping up to do this incredible work. The county will be so grateful for what you are going to accomplish.
Well, we've joked a lot about Councilmember Remy being your work husband, and every now and then I get you to cheat on him with me when we work on some big stuff, so I'll take that. And, you know, as Councilmember Bankston mentioned a moment ago, you are my senior by, I think, 3 weeks? And you've maybe mentioned that from time to time over the last 5+ years in true Shea LaFavor fashion. But these past 5+ years together have been hard for our city, for this body, and there is nobody who I would have rather served those years with, because your tenacity, because your thoughtfulness, and also your family. It has been a joy to get to know you and your family the way that you've allowed us to over the years, that to watch that support grow, not just for yourself, but for our colleagues up here. You know, we like to joke that Corey was our security before we had security a lot of times, when he was keeping an eye out at all the public events, making sure that you got to where you needed to be and we got to where we needed to be. And it's been truly one of the joys of my life to watch you blossom into this role, and to have the opportunity to work with you here at the city. And I think it's quite something. When anyone wants to measure a policy legacy in this body, the last 5+ years is a measuring stick for housing and for you. So if anyone wants to see what hard, determined work looks like, they can take a look at what you've done in housing in the last 5+ years, and that's the measuring stick. And you also know that there's more to do, which I know is why it guts for you to leave this body. But again, you're gonna be down the street. You're gonna be able to bully us in all kinds of other ways and make sure that we continue to build on that legacy, because we deeply, deeply respect you and your opinion and how you have served the people of Columbus so incredibly well. So I'm very, very proud of you, very, very proud of your family. And thank you for stepping up over these last 5+ years to show the leadership that you have. It's been a joy of my life to be a part of that. So thanks.
Coming onto council and having the opportunity to share committee assignments with you was probably the most intimidating way to start this job out, because I just cannot express to you how much respect that I have always had for you, and the way that you make policy and the way that you lead in our community. And it has also been the greatest blessing, being able to work with you in this way and to watch and to learn. And I remember when you called to share the news that you were running for prosecutor, and I think I cried then, as I normally do, because I just knew how much I wanted to learn from you. And I want to thank you so sincerely, not just for your legacy, but for the way that you have poured into me and that you have poured into this community. And it has been, again, just the absolute greatest privilege to be able to work so closely with you this year. And I cannot wait to see what more good that we can do together as you transition.
So we've done this a few times now, and, it always got to try to hold the tears back a little bit. But I remember when we heard about your interest in council, and I knew two people I should call that would give me a good feel for who you were. And that was City Attorney Rick Pfeiffer with 3 Fs and Judge Bill Sperlazza. And I could barely get the full question out before they attested to how much of a joy and presence that you bring to whatever you do. And so I was like, all right, I am looking forward to meeting this person. And then, of course, when we met, I said, sign me up, because your presence and your commitment and your involvement with whatever you do to make what you're doing a better place, and your work as a zone attorney, your work here, it's been a really exciting trajectory of growth. And so we talk about, Councilmember Bankston mentioned it, the importance of local leadership now more than ever. But I gotta, I say this around Thanksgiving, but this is a family up here, and we are excited to see one of our own move on to do greater things as it relates to justice and as it relates to public safety in this community. And the best part about it is that we got a partner now at the county level to work together to make things happen. And so I'm excited for this new partnership. I'm sad that the class of 19 is getting a little smaller on this dais, but I mentioned that this was our 62nd meeting this year, but I got that from the clerk because I was like, how many meetings have we sat together? And that's at a minimum 372 meetings throughout the last 6 years. But plenty of more phone calls and plenty more time together traveling on the road. And thank you to Corey and the entire Favor team that's back there. When we say work husband, it's more or less they've kept me in line while we're out traveling, and I'm forever appreciative to that. But I look forward to our continued partnership, and we love you with all of our heart. Congratulations.
So it's so hard to go at the end of all these things, because how often are we going to repeat the same stuff? I will just say to you, Shayla, you are amazing, talented, and inspiration to us all, and especially to the little brown girl that lives in my house who knew your name before most of the other council members, saw you running, and was like, oh, she's running for president. And I had to remind her, first, not yet, she's running for prosecutor, but that just shows you how much you will influence so many young girls to come who can truly believe they can see themselves in your seat and other seats of government. So thank you. You're a true public servant. You have left some really big shoes to fill, which I think is going to be impossible. The only thing we can really do is follow your footsteps and continue to make change in this city for generations to come. Thank you, thank you, thank you for everything you have done for the city of Columbus. We appreciate it.
Councilmember, are there any few words that you'd like to say? Let me say thank you.
I know all the directors are like, hurry this crap up. To everyone that I've ever had the opportunity to work with in my personal office, Rolanda Hampton, Charles Newman, Tynesha Harden, Sandeep Dijendo, Anissa Liebman, Kendra Asaidu. I could not have done any of the work that I have done over the last 6 years without having an amazing staff that has been just as dedicated to serving our community as I have. I have something that I wrote, so I wouldn't go on too long. And it's going to be included in my last newsletter as a council member. And it reads, "Dear friends and neighbors, serving as your voice on Columbus City Council has been an utmost privilege, one that every day I feel proud and humbled to have. Over my years of service, I have worked hand in hand with so many driven and profoundly altruistic individuals to elevate and tackle the challenges facing members of our community while working to seize on opportunities to make life better for our neighbors. Whether it's advocating for affordable housing, improving neighborhood safety, or tackling dire issues like gun violence and homelessness, I've drawn inspiration and strength from the people of Columbus to help fuel our fight for equality and justice. As I prepare to face a new and thrilling chapter as your Franklin County prosecutor, I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude for the trust, cooperation, and community support that has allowed my time on council to have such a resounding impact. The strides we have made as a community fill me with immense pride and a sense of purpose, and I will carry those experiences with me as I step into this next opportunity. When I reflect on my 13 years of service to the city of Columbus, 6 of them on city council, I am proud of what we have accomplished together. Over the last few years, I've legislated over 12 policies intended to address housing insecurity with the Housing for All legislative package. I've advocated for public safety reforms with the Reimagining Safety Initiative, passed a 3-piece common sense gun legislative package, championed a comprehensive reproductive justice legislative package, created the Columbus Youth Council, spearheaded the effort to amplify and fund Deliver Black Dreams, expanded our effort to protect immigrant and refugee families through the Columbus Families Together Fund, created the Casey Goodson CDL program to help more young brown and Black people gain access to CDL licenses. What's not included in that is that I've also created the Bourbon Caucus, to which I leave. You're still not a member yet, Nick Bankston, processing that application. But through our work, we have bolstered public health initiatives, expanded protection for immigrants, and addressed housing insecurity, and fought for safer neighborhoods. The success of these initiatives have been made possible, only through your support, trust, and shared commitment to bettering our city, for which I have the utmost appreciation. In this next chapter, my devotion to justice and equality and equity remains unwavering. As prosecutor, I will focus on preventing crime through evidence-based strategies, advocating youth violence prevention, and ensuring our justice system is just, accessible, and inclusive to the needs of all those whom I serve. Leaving City Council is bittersweet for me, but I have confidence that the work we've started will not cease. The challenges we face together are ongoing, but I know the seeds we've planted will grow with the dedication of my council colleagues, community leaders, and all of you. This isn't the end of the journey. It's a continuation of our shared mission to create a better, more equitable future. Once again, thank you for being such an integral part of this journey. Together, we have built a solid foundation upon which our city will continue to strive for a brighter tomorrow, and I look forward to continuing to serve Franklin County with the same dedication and determination. Yours always in service. Thank you.
You help us celebrate Councilmember Shayla Favor. In true favor fashion, we have a lot of housing legislation tonight that will close out our policy package. Are there any comments by our elected officials? Hearing none, are there any requests by members of council for the removal of an ordinance or resolution from the consent portion of the agenda? May we now have a motion to waive readings of the titles of third-day legislation by the clerk? Clerk, please call the roll.
Barosa de Padilla, Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Howard, Dorans, Favor, Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Will the clerk now read into the record the order numbers of third-day legislation on tonight's agenda?
Finance and Governance Committee, ordinances 3362, 3422, 3451, 2024. Neighborhoods, Recreation and Parks Committee, ordinances 3433 and 3434-2024. Health, Human Services and Equity Committee, ordinance 3385-2024. Public Utilities and Sustainability Committee, ordinances 3284, 3291, 3309, 3319, 3346, 3354, 3380, 3467-2024. Rules and Policy Committee, ordinance 3412-2024.
Seeing no speakers on the first reading portion of the agenda, the following ordinance appear on our agenda as consent action. Will the clerk now read those into the record?
Resolutions of expression 339, 343, 342, 340, 341, X-2024. Finance and Governance Committee ordinances 3073, 3096, 3105, 3156, 3176, 3177, 3182, 3239, 3247, 3273, 3282, 3300, 3389, 3432, 3455, 3460, 3468, 3473, 3500, 3532-2024. Economic Development and Small and Minority Business Committee, ordinances 3160, 3217, 3275, 3276, 3315, 3373, 3399, 3402, 3537-2024. Public Service and Transportation Committee, ordinances 3118, 3120, 3193, 3195, 3206, 3207, 3221, 3223, 3225, 3232, 3394, 3472-2024. Neighborhoods, Recreation and Parks Committee, ordinances 3063, 3064, 3065, 3067, 3316, 3361, 3372, 3383, 3395, 3423, 3461, 3534-2024. Workforce, Education and Labor Committee, ordinances 3266, 3308, 3374, 3475, 3509-2024. Housing, Homelessness and Building Committee, ordinances 2802, 3211, 3318, 3349, 3360, 3540-2024. Health, Human Services and Equity Committee, ordinances 3269, 3420, 3459-2024. Public Safety and Criminal Justice Committee, ordinances 3072, 3312, 3343, 3348, 3351, 3352, 3357, 3368, 3378, 3379, 3381, 3452, 3458, 3474, 3489, 3497, 2024. Public Utilities and Sustainability Committee, ordinances 2782, 3017, 3044, 3104, 3106, 3109, 3112, 3117, 3133, 3153, 3159, 3199, 3281, 3287, 3294, 3322, 3393, 3410, 3443-2024. Rules and Policy Committee, we have appointments from the Mayor's Office numbered A0213, 214, 215, 216, 217, 218, 219, 220, 221, 222, and 223-2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Seeing no speakers on the consent portion of the agenda, may I have a motion for approval of these items designated as consent? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcowar, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
The consent portion of the agenda is passed. A bit of housekeeping. Will the clerk read the numbers of the legislation in first reading this evening that require a waiver of second reading?
3362, 3422, 3451, 3433, 3434, 3385, 3291, 3309, 3319, 3346, 3354, 3380, and 3467, and 3412-2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can I get a motion to waive the second reading on these items? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcowar, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we're going to go out of order. There are several ordinances in the Rules and Policy Committee that we want to get to first. And so we're going to go to Rules and Policy. The first person I'm going to call on is Councilmember Rosa de Padilla, who has ordinance 2851-2024. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. 2 weeks ago, we held a public hearing focused on Bike Plus and the upcoming changes to our micromobility fleet. Residents provided strong support and public testimony, particularly on the expansion of bike lanes. Last week, we adopted the Bike Plus plan and 2 additional ordinances related to VO and COGO that provide updates to our micromobility fleet in the city of Columbus. Today's ordinance builds on these initiatives by clarifying city policies to ensure pedestrian and ADA access remains unobstructed by e-scooters and bikes. Ordinance 2851-2024 to enact, amend, and repeal various codes of Chapter 904 by Title IX, Streets, Parks, and Public Properties Code of the Columbus City Code, The purpose of this legislation is to amend and update city policy related to the issuance and renewal of leases as it relates to shared mobility devices and low-speed micromobility devices under Chapter 904, and also clarify city policy to maintain pedestrian ADA access free of e-scooters and bikes. This will update language to ensure that our curb ramps or wheelchair ramps and the area surrounding shall be free from obstruction by bicycles, shared mobility devices, and other similar vehicles or devices. We want Columbus to remain both walkable and bikeable, and we're excited about the upcoming improvements that our shared fleet will keep our residents moving. So first, a request to amend as emergency.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcowar, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Amend it.
Thank you, and now I move for passage as amended.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcowar, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, we'll go to Councilmember Dorans, who has ordinance 3439-2024.
Thank you, Council President. Again, that ordinance is 3201-2024 to enact new sections of 4501.205, 4501.245, and 4525.17 of the Columbus City Codes to amend section 4501-275 and 4509.90 and to repeal existing sections 4501-275 and 4509, adding definitions and requirements to address safety around multi-unit residential ponds in the city of Columbus. Over the last decade, nearly 50 people have died in ponds across the city of Columbus. Oftentimes, these fatalities have happened at retention ponds, and for a number of years, I served as the Public Utilities Chair of this body. And whenever these tragedies would happen, ultimately someone would ask the question, what can we do to prevent these tragedies from happening in the future? And ultimately, over the last several years, we've taken a lot of time and effort here at City Council to find a way in order to help prevent these tragedies from happening in the future. Nearly half of those individuals who have died in one of these ponds have been kids. I'm a father of a 4-year-old, and last week I went out to one of these ponds, and as we drove in, we saw a playground that was literally next to one of these ponds that 11 people have died in. And my 4-year-old said, "Daddy, I want to go play in that playground," only feet away from what has been a death trap for many folks in our community. That demonstrates that these have created tragedy after tragedies across our community. So tonight's legislation aims to address these dangerous ponds in our community and will work to ensure that all ponds are safer and will have necessary prevention tools to hopefully prevent future tragedies. This will amend our nuisance code, Title 45 of the Housing Code, to include adding a definition of public nuisance to include multi-unit residential ponds and allowing the Department of Building and Zoning Services to declare these ponds to be a nuisance based on injuries or deaths that have occurred there, requiring safety measures to be undertaken by owners of these properties in which the ponds are located or installed, installing signage warning people of possible dangers of drowning, installation of approved flotation devices, and an annual notice provided to residents of a property a warning of the possible dangers of drowning in the pond, as well as detailing safety features of the pond. The legislation would also require that only any multi-unit residential pond constructed after the effective date of the legislation have a submerged bench or a safety shelf, a common and required feature of stormwater ponds that creates a gentle sloping area at the entrance of a pond that hopefully will make them safer. This legislation will also require the Department of Public Safety in neighborhoods as well as Columbus Public Health to report incidents of injuries or death to the Department of Building and Zoning Services within 14 days of that incident, so that that department who is in charge of regulating these ponds under this legislation are aware if and when an incident has happened, so that they can actually prescribe whether, one, make a determination whether or not a nuisance exists, and then two, if it does, to require safety improvements to protect the community from those ponds. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this legislation has taken 2 years to get to this body here tonight because it's been an incredibly complicated issue to tackle given all the different regulatory issues that exist, both from these ponds that some exist under our stormwater manual and others that exist otherwise. And we've had a lot of different people across multiple different departments work on this to bring us here today. And I want to thank Olivia Bassell, Karen Gray from Columbus Public Health. I want to thank Wendy Boots, Tony Celebrezzi, and Director Scott Messer for the Department of Building and Zoning Services, Franklin County Coroner Nate Overmeyer, Public Safety Deputy Director Micah Holleran, John Oswalt, Kevin McCain from our Legislative Research Office, and certainly Andy McDonald from my staff, who has been integral in bringing this legislation forward here tonight. And I wanted to pause and see if Director Messer had any comments that he would like to make at this time.
President Pro Tem, President Hardin, other members of council, I'd just like to express my thanks as well to you and your leadership and your team at pushing this and making sure that this became a reality. As you mentioned, even one death is too many. And it's our hope that through this legislation and the implementation, that it will really make a difference in our city by preventing future tragedies from happening. So thank you again.
Thank you, Director. And again, I appreciate everyone in your department sort of embracing this legislation conceptually when we first talked about it a number of years ago and getting to the point where we're here today to actually put something in place that will hopefully prevent some of these tragedies from happening in the future. We do have one public speaker signed up to speak on this ordinance tonight, Mr. Dan Abram. Mr. Abram, welcome to council, sir. Thank you for being here.
President, distinguished members of the council, and soon-to-be Franklin County prosecutor, thank you for giving me a few minutes here today. My name is Dan Abraham. I'm with the law firm of Colley, Schroyer, and Abraham here in Columbus. We're on South High Street. There was a young child, we'll call her Baby Jane. She wandered out of the apartment complex, walked around the back of the apartment complex, and within 30 feet of the apartment complex is a retention pond. That pond has a sloping that goes down into the pond. The pond itself, basis is very murky. It's almost like quicksand. Mother is in the house, breastfeeding her youngest child. Her oldest child is called out to a neighbor's house to assist them. The older daughter thought that Baby Jane was with mom, and mom thought Baby Jane was with daughter. Tragically, Baby Jane wanders out the back door, out the side door of the garage, wanders around the back. Within a matter of minutes, One of the other neighbors in the surrounding apartment complex around this retention pond sees baby Jane in the water. She immediately screams out, calls 911. There is a man standing nearby. He doesn't know how to swim. He sees the child and cannot assist. There's nothing he can do. He's just standing there helplessly. By this point in time, older daughter comes back to the house, says, "Where's baby Jane?" to mom. She says, Mom says, "I thought she was with you." They go running out of the house. The police are called. The police officer runs up, drops his gun belt, swims out to the child. He was able to save her life, brought her to the shore, resuscitated her, and was able to save her life, but not before she sustained an anoxic brain injury. She is forever bedridden. She will need help the rest of her life. Her life care plan that I'm developing for her will be multiples of millions of dollars to take care of her. Now, why am I up here? I'm hoping you'll put me out of business when it comes to these kinds of cases. I don't want these cases. Years ago, I used to be in the prosecutor's office, and I try to trumpet the rights and claims of injured people. But this is a piece of legislation that is before you now that is extremely important. So what I get in these cases is motions for summary judgment or a motion to dismiss the case. And in this particular case, the defense has cited, and this is a true story, it's an active case. They cite the plans approved by the City of Columbus Stormwater Program Manager of the Division of Sewage and Drainage, the City of Columbus Administrator of the Division of Sewage and Drainage, and the City of Columbus Director of Public Safety. They are using the lack of any regulation rules against us in these cases to put the responsibility where it should be, and that is in the hands of the premises owner. Now, what's going to happen if they are not required to be responsible for this? May I continue?
You may.
If they are not, if I cannot hold them responsible, then what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that the taxpayers are going to pay the bill. Medicare, Medicaid, because this family will not be able to afford the health care that this child needs. So the taxpayers will take on the burden. So this legislation that you're proposing, Councilman Durant, is a wonderful piece of legislation because the court system right now, most of the cases that we have in this jurisdiction, in the 10th District Court of Appeals and other districts in other states, and I've done nationwide research, say these are open and obvious dangers. Even though you talk about that in your pond legislation, frequently asked questions, that these young children are too young to appreciate the dangers, the court system has said, yes, you can appreciate them, even at a young, tender age of 2 or 3 years of age. So without legislation in place that acknowledges the dangers and the hazards, we can't impose liability and responsibility on premises owners. If we can't put that responsibility on the premises owners, it's not going to exist. And these retention ponds need to be guarded. And we know in the engineering world, when you have a hazardous condition, the first thing you try to do is you try to eliminate it. If you can't eliminate it, then you guard against it. If you can't guard against it, then you warn. Warnings are not going to help 2-year-olds who wander out from the parents' supervision. A momentary lapse, fencing, even big rocks, even foliage around that pond for that very short 2 to 3 to 4 minutes would have held that child up so they would never gotten into that retention pond. So I trumpet your efforts. I would like to see the legislation be more proactive. It's great to have those kinds of things like the toss rings and the retrieving poles and all those things, but let's prevent the kids from getting into the water. Let's require fencing. There are apartment complexes, and I've canvassed the city of Columbus. There are apartment complexes who voluntarily put up fencing around their ponds to prevent these things from occurring. It is preventable, and it certainly would be a great day to see legislation here that we could use in our litigation to impose a responsibility to get these apartment complexes to spend the money. And the amount of money they would have to spend to put up these fencing and protections pales in comparison to the dollars that are going to be spent for the health care for the children who have anoxic brain injuries or the death claims that have been filed. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Abraham. Any questions for our public speaker? Seeing none, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for your time.
Want to, again, reiterate, we had a public hearing about this a number of weeks ago. So as I said earlier, the Department of Building and Zoning Services will review ponds in which the safety incident occurs. However, residents can also, utilizing 311, report a pond in their neighborhood or their community that they believe is dangerous and needs to be reviewed as a nuisance, in which then the Department of Building and Zoning Services can prescribe certain types of safety requirements, all the way up to and including fencing. Any other questions or comments from council members? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Thank you, Chair, for this. As a father of a 3-year-old that has a pond behind their house, this work, as the speaker just says, will save lives. So thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorance Favor, Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed. I have actually, and this is a part of Councilmember Favor's legislative housing package. It was the piece that I had the opportunity to work on in my office, and so I want to thank all those, Nia Walters and John Tanous and all those who helped work on our wholesaler registry piece of legislation. It's Ordinance 3505. 2024 is to enact Chapter 4518 of the Columbus City Codes to create residential property wholesaler registry. It's to amend sections 2229-03 of Columbus City Codes to accommodate the electronic filing of domestic partnership declarations. So tonight, I'm happy to finally be passing this legislation to regulate the practice of wholesaling in the city of Columbus. For those of us who are unfamiliar, wholesaling is an unlicensed real estate practice where an individual known as a wholesaler enters into contract with a homeowner to buy their property. However, instead of completing the sale, the wholesaler will sell the contract to another buyer for a markup. Effectively, the wholesalers act as a middleman, skimming profit off the top from our residents. To make matters worse, wholesalers often target our most vulnerable residents, seniors, and low-income individuals. They often pressure them to make quick decisions, getting them to sell the one thing they have to use to build generational wealth, which is their home. Wholesalers are who send those "can I buy your house" texts and letters that a lot of us get. They have no fiduciary duty to represent the best interests of the buyer or the seller. They're not regulated in our state, and they often even misrepresent themselves as real estate agents or brokers. Wholesalers target communities and neighborhoods that are quickly changing. And that's why this is so important, because Columbus has many of those types of neighborhoods. Our very first hearing on wholesaling was last December. So we've been working on this for a long time now, because this issue is complicated. Only a few cities and states have tried to tackle this issue. But today, we are introducing a wholesaler registry in Columbus. We are requiring wholesalers to register and report all of their transactions with the city, to disclose key information to homeowners and buyers, and to meet new standards for marketing and conduct. This legislation will go into effect in July 2025 and represents the next step in Columbus's ongoing effort to safeguard homeowners' financial interests while also creating a fairer, more equitable real estate environment. Next year, in partnership with our Housing for All campaign and the Columbus Realtors, we will launch an education campaign to raise awareness of wholesaling and how buyers and sellers can report unscrupulous behavior if they experience it. To be clear, we do not think this legislation will entirely solve the problem, especially not of out-of-state investors buying up properties here in our city. There's a lot we are preempted from doing as a city by the state, and we have a lot more work to do. But what I am proud of is that these regulations are a big first step. They promote fair practices, they protect vulnerable residents from predatory behavior, and make our local housing market work a little bit better. Before I move on this, I want to see if Councilmember Favor, who was a champion, have any remarks, or any of my colleagues. You're good? All right. I don't think that we have any speakers on this piece of legislation. So, we do? Who is it? Oh, Mr. Nate Wilkins. Mr. Wilkins, welcome to council. Mr. Wilkins is speaking in support of this piece of legislation.
Cool. 1612 Arlington Avenue, Mr. Lathandra Wilkins. I would say thank you, Shannon Hardin, in favor. I left a couple postcards at the house. I'm being targeted with this now is because what's around me is houses being bought, out-of-town investors, wholesalers, and things. The other day, I just got a letter in the mail to talking about buying my house for $140,000. And I take care of my home, but I constantly get this in the mail. I also get phone calls. And, money's not the key answer because I'm not selling. But the problem here, we have this in poor communities, all up and down Linden, North Linden, South Linden, Mount Grogan. And so we want to put something in place. We want to know who they are. I didn't bring a flyer, but one of them is out of Hilliard, Ohio, I do believe. And one of them is out of Dublin, Ohio, because they see the opportunity what City of Columbus is doing with Linden and South Linden. They're targeting low-income communities that people cannot afford. And so I do want to say thank you for what you're doing. Now is the time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wilkins, for your support for this legislation. Councilmember Favor?
I will be brief because we've got some other policies coming up, but I just wanted to extend my appreciation to Council President Harden and his team in leading this endeavor. We've made mention to a public hearing that we held in the Housing Committee about a month ago, a little over a month ago now. And in that hearing, you could hear the discussion that talked about the complexities of navigating the difficult terrain of wholesaling. And it also demonstrated in real time the challenge in legislating some of these great ideas and recognizing the limitations of your power. And my hats go off to Council President and his team because they never gave up. In fact, they dug in to figure out within our local capacity what we could do to demonstrate to our residents that we were serious about tackling this predatory behavior. And so I'm incredibly grateful for you all sticking it out and putting forward the policy that is before us today.
That was really nice for you to say it that way. She would come to my office every week and say, "Where's that wholesaler legislation?" But it was very complicated, and that's why I do want to thank not just my staff, but the city attorney's office as well. It was a lot of legal conversations of how we make this work, and there are not many cities that have been able to figure this out, and that's what took us over a year to get comfortable with a piece of legislation that we think will stand and have impact. So thank you so much, Councilmember, and thank you for all those who have worked on this. I first move to amend as submitted by the clerk by voice. Clerk, please call the roll by voice.
Mr. Bankston? Yes. Ms. Barosa de Padilla? Yes. Ms. Day Alcower? Yes. Mr. Dorans? Ms. Favor? Ms. Green? Mr. Remy?
Abstain.
Mr. White? President Harden?
Yes, amended. Next, I move for passage by voice. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bankston? Ms. Barosa de Padilla? Ms. De Alcauer? Mr. Dorans? Ms. Favor? Ms. Green? Mr. Remy?
Abstain.
Mr. White? President Harden?
Yes, ordinance is passed. Next, in rules and reference, we have 3435-2024 is to amend section 2229.03 of Columbus City Codes to accommodate the electronic filing of domestic partnership declarations. This ordinance amends sections 229-03 and 229-04 of the Columbus City Codes, the code sections associated with the City Domestic Partners Registry. The current code requires that any two persons wishing to establish a domestic partnership must complete and submit a declaration of domestic partnership with the City of Columbus clerk and do so either in person or via mail. This code change replaces the in-person and by mail filing options of a declaration and replaces it with an electronic option to accommodate electronic submissions of a declaration. This code change also adds an administrative fee to accommodate electronic filing costs. So basically, it helps support, streamline, and improve the online filing process for those seeking to certify the status of their domestic partnership. I first move to amend and submit it to the clerk. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bankston, Barosa de Padilla, De Alcauer, Dorans, Favor, Green, Remy White, President Harden?
Next, I request to amend to emergency. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bankston, Barosa de Padilla, De Alcauer, Dorans, Favor, Green, Remy White, President Harden?
And now I move for passage. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bankston, Barosa de Padilla, De Alcauer, Dorans, Favor, Green, Remy White, President Harden?
Passed. And last for me in rules, we have 3536-2024 to amend sections 2321-54 of Columbus City Codes to reduce manual transactions within the city clerk's office associated with legislative agent registrations and to declare an emergency. The City of Columbus requires lobbyists or legislative agents to register with the city. This legislation just reduces the manual transactions within the city clerk's office associated with legislative agent registrations. It clarifies that registration submissions and returns by the clerk's office will be handled electronically rather than by accepting or distributing paper copies. It also updates the registration fee of $45 to further include an administrative fee. So emergency action is requested in order to align code change effectiveness with the establishment of an electronic online payment processing in early January. Unless there are further questions or comments from my colleagues, I move for passage. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bankston, Barosa de Padilla, De Alcauer, Dorans, Favor, Green, Remy White, President Harden?
Okay. Sticking in rules and references, the next ordinance to come before council is ordinance 3510, and that is carried by Councilmember Favor. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
In 2021, as chair of Council's Housing Committee, I had the privilege of championing the Housing for All legislative package, 3 groundbreaking policies that strengthen renter protections and lay the foundation for ensuring housing security in our city. But that was just the beginning. We named it Housing for All because at Columbus City Council, we believe that housing is a human right, period. This belief isn't just rhetoric. It's a commitment to the idea that every individual deserves a safe, secure, and dignified place to live. Housing as a human right means governments and communities have an obligation to ensure everyone has access to affordable, habitable, and secure housing. It means protecting individuals from arbitrary evictions, preventing homelessness, and addressing housing discrimination. Because without stable housing, so many other aspects of life become unattainable. Last year, we built on that foundation. In March of 2023, City Council announced our housing initiatives, a bold 12-piece legislative package designed to invest in our city by developing new, sustainable, and affordable housing units, preserving our current housing stock, and creating a housing market that is inclusive of all people, regardless of socioeconomic status. These initiatives reflect a team effort a collective commitment by every council member to address the housing crisis with intentionality and with urgency. Together, we have worked tirelessly, engaging with stakeholders, advocates, and community members to shape solutions that meet the needs of our residents. This year alone, we have held 3 public hearings on this and held more than 10 meetings with diverse groups over the last few months, ensuring that the policies before us tonight are well-informed and responsive. To date, we have passed 7 of the policies, which include pay-to-stay protections and access to home ownership opportunities. Tonight, we have just passed another one, passed by Council President Harden, led by Council President Harden, and we will vote on 2 additional policies. The first being Legislation 3510-2024 to amend Chapter 4501 and enact Sections 4551.08 and 4551.081 of the Columbus City Codes to create an access to legal services policy. This legislation takes a significant step towards addressing the eviction crisis in Columbus by establishing a comprehensive access to legal services policy. With more than half of our residents renting homes and Franklin County unfortunately leading the state in evictions, it's imperative that we act to protect tenants' rights and prevent housing instability. This ordinance creates a framework to ensure that eligible, low-income tenants facing eviction have access to legal representation. Specifically, it focuses on households with at least 1 child, where the annual gross income does not exceed the federal poverty guidelines. Studies consistently show that tenants with legal representation are far more likely to avoid eviction and remain in their homes. This not only benefits families directly, but also has broader positive impacts on our community. The Stout study, commissioned by City Council, revealed a compelling financial case for this policy. It found that for every dollar invested in providing access to legal counsel for tenants, the city and county would see a $4 return on investment. This is due to reduced shelter costs, healthcare expenses, and other costs associated with homelessness that are voided when families can stay housed. This ordinance goes beyond simply providing funding for legal aid. It outlines the specific types of legal services that will be offered, including both brief legal assistance and full legal representation. It also establishes criteria for designating qualified legal aid organizations to provide these services, ensuring that tenants receive high-quality representation. Furthermore, the ordinance emphasizes the importance of community education and outreach. Designated organizations will be required to work with community partners to educate tenants about their rights and available resources, empowering them to navigate the often complex eviction process. To ensure transparency and accountability, the ordinance mandates annual reporting from legal aid organizations, detailing the number of tenants served, the types of legal services provided, and the outcomes achieved. This data will help us track the effectiveness of the program and make any necessary adjustments to maximize its impact. By enacting this access to legal services policy, we're taking a proactive approach to preventing evictions, reducing homelessness, and promoting housing stability for families across Columbus. This is a significant investment in the well-being of our community, and we believe it will have a lasting positive impact for years to come. With that, we have invited a few invited guests who will share some brief words on the legislation. First up is one of our great partners from the Legal Aid Society of Columbus, Mr. Joe Hsu. Joe Hsu, welcome back to City Council.
President Harden, President Pro Tem Dorans, and of course, Councilmember Faber. It was really difficult for me to even think about how to prepare for tonight because I feel like you guys have all the information needed to really assess the difficulties that tenants in Columbus or even just Ohio face right now. This legislation for access to legal services could not come at a better time. We started the Tenant Advocacy Project to provide protections for tenants at eviction court back in 2017.
And back then, it was just me and a couple volunteers with a folding table at court, just trying to provide services to anybody who would ask for it. And, back then in 2017, we were talking about 18,000 evictions. This year, we're looking at probably about 25,000 evictions. We're talking about 1 out of every 10 renters in Franklin County. And it is imperative that we continue this work. We've expanded from 1 attorney at court to about 15, 16 attorneys. And there's no solution to this problem, but the work must continue. As Councilmember Bankston said, there's a lot of work to be done still. And we're here, we're ready. We really appreciate the tremendous support that this council has provided for us to do this work. And we look forward to continuing our service.
Thank you, and we appreciate the continued partnership with the Legal Aid Society of Columbus.
Thank you.
Up next, we have an old friend to Columbus City Council, Mr. Andrew Dyer.
Weird on this side. I don't like this setup either. You're all just staring. I'm going to start with a simple fact. Over 90% of eviction cases are filed because of non-payment of rent. It's a straightforward statement often used in meetings with our stakeholders and out in the community. And on its surface, it seems logical. If tenants don't pay their rent, why should landlords suffer financially? But the reality is far more nuanced. Non-payment of rent is not an isolated decision. It is the result of cascading challenges that many tenants face in their daily lives. Imagine this: a single mother is trying to manage her household budget. She's already stretched thin, balancing a modest income with bills, groceries, and transportation costs. Then one month her car breaks down, or maybe she doesn't own a car and relies on public transit that occasionally runs late, causing her to miss work hours. Add to that the possibility of a medical emergency or a sick child, which anybody who has children knows they are sick every other day, who needs medical attention or who needs his mother's or her mother's attention. These everyday disruptions can throw even the most carefully planned budget into chaos. A late or reduced paycheck could mean failing short on rent or utilities, and when that happens, the consequences can spiral. For many, the next step is an eviction notice. Suddenly, they're forced to become attorneys overnight, navigating a legal system they don't understand. To defend themselves, they must take time off of work, arrange childcare, and travel downtown, where they most likely will have to pay for parking, only to face a landlord represented by a legal expert. Even if tenants win their case, the process creates what we call disruptive displacement. The economic strain, the mental stress, and time off work can have long-lasting repercussions. And if they lose, the fallout is devastating. Families are uprooted from their homes. Children are forced to move schools, losing their relationships with their teachers, their friends, and their neighborhood support system. Tenants face damage to their credit scores and eviction records, making it harder to secure safe housing in the future. And our community as a whole feels the ripple effects of instability. But what if we could change the narrative? What if we could ensure that families facing evictions have trained and educated attorneys by their side? Data from our own Franklin County Eviction Court, through the amazing work of Stout and the Eviction Access to Counsel study, shows that unrepresented tenants have only an 8% chance of avoiding this disruption. When tenants have legal representation, that number jumps to 82%. That's not just a statistic, it's a lifeline for families fighting to stay in their homes. Providing legal representation levels the playing field and creates better outcomes for everyone involved. For tenants and their families, it means the chance to remain in their homes, allowing children to stay in their schools, and family to avoid the trauma of displacement. It's a return to stability and to normalcy. And for landlords, eviction attorneys can act as problem solvers, connecting tenants with social agencies and accessing emergency rental assistance faster. This ensures landlords are made whole, tenants remain housed, and we relieve the added stress and cost of re-renting a unit. This approach addresses the root causes of evictions while minimizing the residual effects: credit scores, housing opportunities, and long-term well-being of children who might otherwise face homelessness. Councilmember Favor, you have been a champion for policies that address these challenges. You have consistently fought to even the playing field, like recognizing that our system should not require individuals to become lawyers overnight just to defend their right to remain in their homes. As you leave council, know from my perspective that this piece of legislation stands as one of the most impactful contributions of your career. Together, we are creating a fairer, more compassionate system, one that ensures families in our community can stay housed, can stay hopeful, and can stay connected to the people and places that they cherish. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Hannah Reed, Interim Director of the Columbus Women's Commission.
Thank you, Chair Favor, President Hardin, members of council. On behalf of our chair, First Lady Shannon Ginther, and the entire Women's Commission, I'm excited to be here tonight to support the critical work of establishing access to counsel in our city. The Columbus Women's Commission launched the Eviction Prevention Working Group, which Andrew Dyer participated in 2017, partnering with the Franklin County Municipal Court, Legal Aid, Community Mediation Services, City Council, and local landlord groups. In 2019, the group released a report outlining recommendations to improve the eviction court system. To date, 5 of the 6 recommendations have been implemented, including establishing a process to remove eviction records, improving the eviction summons sent to tenants prior to a hearing, and hiring of social worker and navigators for our eviction court. This group continues to meet monthly, driving collaboration among partners and advancing systemic improvements in the eviction process. In 2023, Franklin County saw a record high number of evictions. More tenants were evicted than can fit into Lower.com Stadium or Nationwide Arena. And as we sit here today, even more evictions have been filed in 2024 with 2 weeks left in the year. Evictions disproportionately affect women, people of color, and families with children. A stable home provides a safe place for families to grow, a refuge to return to after a long day, and a gathering place to celebrate holidays. The Stout Report, commissioned by City Council, highlighted and quantified the economic impact of investing in legal representation at eviction court. These benefits come from reduced strain on the social safety net, lower costs for homelessness services, improved employment stability, healthcare savings, and more. The Columbus Women's Commission is committed to continuing this crucial work with our community partners and City Council to address the impacts of the rising eviction rate, not just on women in Columbus, but on all of our neighbors. Tonight, with the codification of access to counsel, we, the city, are signaling that this should have a permanent place within our local government as a service offered to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Are there any questions or comments by my colleagues? Well, seeing none, I very excitedly move for passage.
Second.
Bankston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Hardin.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, but we're not done. Next, we have ordinance 3525-2024 to enact in section 4551.07 of the Columbus City Codes to require rental increase notification. This legislation aims to protect renters in Columbus by establishing a rental increase notification policy. With the rising cost of housing and essential goods, it's crucial that renters have adequate time to adjust significant rent increases. Unexpected and sudden rent hikes can create immense financial strain and housing instability for individuals and for families. This ordinance, which takes effect on January 31st, 2025, requires landlords to provide at least 60 days written notice to tenants before increasing rent by more than 10%. This advance notice gives renters time to prepare for the increased costs, explore options for adjusting their budget, or, if necessary, seek alternative housing arrangements. To ensure clarity and transparency in rental agreements, the ordinance also mandates that landlords clearly outline all terms and conditions of occupancy, including rent, security deposits, fees, and other periodic payments. It further clarifies that when tenants make payments, the rent must be credited first before any other charges. It's important to note that this policy does not apply to subsidized housing where rent is tied to tenant income or to specific circumstances. To give landlords sufficient time to update their rental agreements and practices, the penalty provisions for violating this ordinance will not take effect until July 1st, 2025. After that date, landlords who fail to comply with the notification requirements could face fines. This rental increase notification policy is a significant step towards promoting housing stability and protecting renters in Columbus. By providing adequate notice of rent increases, we're empowering tenants to make informed decisions about their housing and avoid the hardship of unexpected financial burdens. I'm extremely proud of our city, and I want to thank my colleagues and our dedicated social service organizations, our businesses, and our residents, because it will truly take all of us working together to make change. Now more than ever, it is critical that we work to not only ensure that we have enough housing to accommodate the projected growth of Columbus, but also to protect our legacy residents, the residents that have helped to create Columbus's amazing neighborhoods, from the effects of gentrification, displacement, and systemic racism that have contributed to the inequities that we see in education, healthcare, employment, and yes, even in housing. The work is far from done, but as I said, I am very confident in the leadership of these amazing leaders around me that housing will stay a priority to this council, and together more change is to come. So thank you to all of my council colleagues for their support, to Director Stevens and his team at the Department of Development for their partnership throughout the years, and to my incredible team, Naya Walters, Kendra Asayadu, Sandeep Jindal, and Andrew Dyer for their hard work on these initiatives. To learn more about Housing for All and 2023 housing initiatives, please visit www.housingforallcbus.com. Are there any questions or comments by my colleagues? None? I move for passage.
Second.
Oh, I have a speaker. Of course, I have a speaker. Who is? Is it Nate? Mr. Nate? Mr. Nate Wilkins. Welcome back, sir.
Others, and I'm Mr. Nathaniel George Wilkins. First of all, let me say this. I don't think it's going to give enough time to the people that occupy the house. I don't want to see 60 days, but I need to see 175 days. Also, the landlord.
Yes.
Yes, I think there should be a penalty of $575. I don't know if this includes this housing only, apartment complexes, residential, the elderly, the disability, but we want to have this in place for more than 109 years since the city is constantly growing. And let me say that again. I want this to be in place for 109 years. There's people that's coming out of college, aging out of their homes, going in other assisted living facilities. We have to have this all year round. And again, I applaud you for all your work you've done. And again, we do need this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins, and thank you for your continued advocacy over the years for all matters related to housing. It is greatly appreciated. And with that, yes, Councilmember Bankston.
I just wanted to, I don't want to belabor the moment, but I just want to say, again, congratulations to you, Councilmember Favor, on getting this monumental package across the finish line. There are still bits and pieces of it. I have one of those. And I've been working diligently with your office as well as City Attorney's Office. And I think to your point, what you have awakened us to is that these big issues that we talk about, and it sounds easy just to flip a switch, but it shows that there's a lot of work that goes into this to make sure not only that we're just saying or passing something that makes us feel good, but passing things that will actually make a difference and stand the test of time. And so I just want to thank you and commend you for that, and also commend you for spreading out the love, if you will. I've not seen in my years of both working in politics and being an elected official that someone would take something like this and say to the rest of their colleagues, this is too big for one person to handle. And I need all of us to be in as a team on this. And so I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you for giving me one of the hardest pieces. I appreciate that. But no, just wanted to not gloss over that moment, that this is really, really big stuff that we accomplished tonight, and there's still more work to do. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Bankston. And you're absolutely right. We have left a robust agenda for whoever steps into the housing chair to keep working hard, because the work is far from done. But one thing we don't do enough is just to take a moment and acknowledge the progress that has been made. And so two things can definitely be true at the same time. We can acknowledge that we have more work to do while also celebrating the great strides that we have done. And it is because of you all that we have been able to do that alongside partnership with the administration and Mayor Ginther. So thank you to all of our partners that have helped us get here today. With that, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you.
Our final piece of legislation in the Rules and Reference Committee is ordinance 3440, and that is carried by Councilmember Remy. Councilman, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Council President. Tonight I have, hold on one second. Doesn't look right. Tonight I have ordinance 3440, 2024, to amend section 250107 of the Columbus City Codes to establish a single point repository for reporting information to the Fire Prevention Bureau concerning the installation, maintenance, testing, and inspections of fire protection systems, and to repeal existing sections 2501.07. This ordinance establishes a single point repository for reporting information to the Fire Prevention Bureau concerning fire protection systems. Currently, the information must be maintained by the owner or occupant of the property at which a fire protection system is utilized. Certified fire and safety inspectors from the Department of Public Safety, Division of Fire, rely upon the information maintained on site to determine whether or not the fire protection systems are maintained in accordance with the Ohio Fire Code and Title 25 of the Columbus City Codes. If the owner or occupant fails to maintain the required information, then the fire inspectors do not know whether or not the fire protection system is operable and the extent of any deficiencies. The single point repository for information allows contractors that provide services, testing, installation, repair, and maintenance of fire prevention systems to submit the required information directly to the Fire Prevention Bureau. Thus, the single point repository will facilitate fire and safety inspections, the repair of inoperable or deficient fire protection systems, and fire code compliance. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you very much, Council President.
Thank you, thank you, Councilmember. We actually have one more piece of legislation in Rules and Reference. We're going to go back to it. Councilmember Weiss is going to carry that. It's ordinance 3412-2024. Councilman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. 3412-2024 to establish the Columbus Advisory Commission on Disability Issues, to enact Chapter 175 of Columbus City Codes, to repeal ordinance number 0896-1999, to authorize the Director of the Department of Human Resources to enter into a contract with contractors necessary to support the work of the Columbus Advisory Commission on Disability Issues, in accordance with Chapter 329 of Columbus City Codes, and to authorize an expenditure of up to $10,000 from the general fund to pay for said contracts. During our November Public Utilities and Sustainability Committee, we heard from Director Moses as well as from members of CACD on the need for this change. By repealing the original ordinance and replacing it with this ordinance, we can codify a disability commission instead of a committee and increase the scope of work that it currently conducts. It is important that we fund and operate this commission to serve Columbus residents living with a disability and ensure their rights are not just met on the Americans with Disabilities Act, but that they have full access and participation as a resident of Columbus. I'd like to invite Assistant Director of Human Resource and ADA Coordinator Zane Jones to the podium to share some brief remarks. He was serving the country in another way when we had our hearing, so we did not get a chance to hear from him, so I appreciate him being here today.
Thank you. Good evening. Council President Hardin, President Pro Tem Dorans, Councilmember Weish, I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. Zane Jones, ADA Coordinator for the City of Columbus. This legislation updates the Columbus Advisory Commission on disability issues. These changes provide additional authority and guidance regarding membership, advisors, and funding at a critical time for our city. Passing this legislation will further advance our ability to hear our residents' concerns as they are our best guide. I want to thank you, Councilmember Weiss, for shepherding this through council. I want to thank the entire team effort by all of you. I want to thank the department directors and Director Moses. If this passes, we'll be in touch tomorrow. And the city attorney's office and Josh Carty. And most importantly, and very heartfelt, I'd like to thank all the individuals who have served as custodians of CACTI since its inception originally in 1999. They're wonderful people, and you're doing them a great honor by passage. That's all I have.
Thank you, Assistant Director, for being here and providing those remarks. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed. We're going to break for zoning. We have a pretty quick zoning, so we'll go straight into that. Is there a motion to recess? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Meeting is in recess. Number 62 will now come to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Are there any additions or corrections to the journal? Hearing none, the journal is approved. We'll now go to the zoning committee. President Pro Tem chairs it. All members serve on it. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. As always, before we get into tonight's zoning agenda, allow me to briefly explain our current rules pertaining to speaking for council on rezonings and variances. We'll only hear a staff presentation of ordinance that have a disapproval from recommending body, or if we have a public speaker signed to speak against an ordinance, we permit 3 speakers on each side of an ordinance, 3 proponents, 3 opponents. We ask speakers limit their remarks to 3 minutes per the standard rules of this body. All speakers on council variances, including city staff, area commissioners, the applicants, and members of the public, will be sworn in before they give testimony. Representative of the area commission are always able to speak on an ordinance and do not need to fill out a speaker slip, but we do ask you alert city staff of your intention to speak at this hearing. We do not have any public speaker slips for tonight's agenda. On the advice of the city attorney's office that will now swear in city staff, please stand and raise your right hand and be sworn in. Do you swear from the testimony about the gift shall be the truth, nothing but the truth, as you shall answer in pains and penalty of perjury? If so, please say I do. Thank you. Please let the record reflect that Tim Dietrich from the Department of Building and Zoning Services has been sworn in. We first have ordinance 3320-2024 to rezone 897 East Mound Street, being 1.06 acres, located on the southwest side of Mound Street, 90-plus feet east of Andrew Street, from R2F Residential District to AR2 Apartment Residential District. Site consists of 4 undeveloped parcels, 2 full parcels, and 2 partial parcels. The proposed rezoning will allow a multi-unit residential uses on the site. The concurrent council variance to allow a 50-unit apartment building will be considered later on tonight's agenda. Proposal has approvals from city staff, Development Commission, and the Near East Side Area Commission. Do my colleagues have questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 3406-2024 to rezone 5551 Shannon Drive, being 24.46 plus acres, located on the south side of Shannon Road, 1,675 feet northeast of Winchester Pike, from R Rural District to ARLD Apartment Residential District. The site consists of 1 undeveloped parcel, and the applicant's request of rezoning will allow for a multi-unit residential development. A small portion of the parcel will be retained for agricultural purposes. A concurrent council variance proposing the apartment complex contain a minimum of 312 units will be considered later on tonight's agenda. The proposal is approved from City Staff, Development Commission, and the Greater Southeast Area Commission. Do my colleagues have questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 3408-2024 to rezone 5524 North Hamilton Road, being 3.8 plus acres located on the east side of North Hamilton Road, 725 plus feet south of Preserve Road, from LC4 Limited Commercial District to CPD Commercial Plan Development District. Site consists of 3 parcels, one undeveloped, one developed with an indoor sports and athletic facility, and one containing access driveway to the site. The requested rezoning will allow the expansion of the existing indoor sport facility and athletic facility and proposes a second 21,000-foot commercial building at this location. The proposal is approved from City Staff, Development Commission, and Northland Community Council. Do my colleagues have questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Now moving to council variances, we have ordinance 3321-2024 to grant a variance provisions of section 3309.14, height districts 3312.21B3 and D1B, landscaping and screening, 3312.49, required parking, 3333.18, building lines, 3333.23, minimum side yard permitted of the Columbus City Codes for property located at 897 East Mountain Street to allow reduced development standards of an apartment building in the AR2 apartment residential district. This is a companion variance to the rezoning ordinance 3320 that we just heard earlier tonight. Requested council variance will allow the development of a 50-unit apartment building as shown on the submitted site plan. Variance is building height, parking, lot screening, building lines, reduced parking from 75 to 25 spaces is included in this request. Proposal is approved from city staff and the Near East Area Commission. I first move to accept the entire staff report into evidence as an exhibit.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Accept it.
Next, I move to adopt the findings of staff, the findings of council.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Adopt it.
Next, move to amend and submit to the clerk.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Amend it.
And finally, move for passage as amended.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. And finally, we have ordinance 3407-2024 to grant a variance provisions of section 3312.21 landscape and screening, 3332.06 R rural area district requirements, and 3333.255 perimeter yard. The Columbus City Codes are property located at 5551 Shannon Drive to allow reduced lot size in the R rural district and reduced development standards for apartment complex in the ARLD apartment residential district. This is a companion variance to the rezoning request we heard with ordinance 3406 earlier tonight. Variances to minimum required lot size, required parking, lot screening, perimeter yard are included in this request that would allow for an apartment complex with a minimum of 312 or maximum of 312 units. Proposal has approval from city staff and the Greater Southeast Area Commission. I first move to accept the staff report into evidence as an exhibit.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Accept it.
Next, I move to adopt the findings of staff as the findings of council.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Adopt it.
And finally, move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. And because the zoning committee is often the sibling of the housing committee, I always like to close it out at the end of the year. We have considered 54 rezoning ordinances this year with 138 council variances, paving the way for over 8,000 potential housing units in the city of Columbus, with 10% of those units being made available for affordable housing. That's in addition to us passing zone in this past year, but that's a lot of housing to go along the great work that we've heard tonight from the Housing for All agenda. So with that, that is the last zoning agenda we have for 2024, everybody.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Colleagues, if you will indulge me, we only have one non-agenda speaker. We can get that out the way right now, too. Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
We will now go to the Finance and Governance Committee, chaired by Councilmember Bangston. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. First up tonight in the Finance and Governance Committee, for second reading, we have ordinance 3363-2024 to authorize the Director of Finance and Management on behalf of the Office of Construction Management to modify the contract with Balmer Construction Company, Inc. for the professional construction services task order basis project, to waive competitive bidding provisions of Chapter 329 of the Columbus City Code and to declare an emergency. This ordinance authorizes the Finance Department to modify an existing construction services contract with Bomber Construction in order to extend the term of the contract. This ordinance also authorizes a waiver of Section 329.14A2 of the Columbus City Code, which requires a performance bond for any construction contract expected to exceed $100,000. This contract represents construction services for small-scale renovation projects, with many such projects being under the $100,000 threshold. Bomber Construction is a WBE certified business. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White. President Harden.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 3436-2024 to establish the Cannabis Host Community Special Reserve Fund. As mentioned during the Finance and Governance hearing for the 2025 operating budget, this ordinance establishes the Cannabis Host Community Special Reserve Fund, into which revenue derived from the taxation of recreational cannabis sales shall be deposited. Once again, I would like to just reiterate that this ordinance does not establish the parameters or specific uses of these funds. This is simply a city accounting measure that ensures that we develop appropriate uses for these funds in partnership with the administration and the community. And I know I am looking forward to having those conversations alongside my colleague, Councilmember Green, who has been a great partner in this effort. I want to thank her for her leadership as well behind the scenes of getting this across the finish line. And we look forward to having those conversations next year with both the community and the administration on how we can utilize these funds, we believe that it will serve as a catalyst for equitable change in our community. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White. President Harden.
Next, we have ordinance 3453-2024 to authorize the Finance and Management Director to enter into a contract for the option to purchase data services with Ohio Bell Telephone Company, LLC, doing business as AT&T, to authorize the expenditure of $1 and to waive the provisions of competitive bidding and to declare an emergency. This ordinance authorizes a universal term contract with Ohio Bell Telephone Company, doing business as AT&T. This contract provides for data service as well as related equipment and maintenance and repairs. The Department of Technology uses this contract to provide internet services citywide. A waiver of competitive bidding for this process is being requested due to the complexity of the systems and the services being provided, as well as the embedded nature of these items, which makes it impractical to bid this for these particular services. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White. President Harden.
Thank you, Council President. May I go back to page 3 of tonight's agenda to read 3 ordinances that are on the first read?
Please.
Thank you. First up, for first read in Finance and Governance Committee, we have ordinance 3362-2024 to authorize the city auditor to modify an existing agreement with Dayforce US Inc. for $590,000 for software subscription to include the Dayforce Talent Module and professional services for guided implementation, to authorize the city auditor to enter into contract with such additional vendors as may be necessary to complete the addition, to waive the competitive bidding provisions of Chapter 329 of Columbus City Code to enter into such contracts, and to authorize the expenditure of $590,000 from the auditor's bond fund. The auditor's office has been working with the Department of Human Resources to utilize some of Dayforce's additional tools and capability for some innovative internal administrative uses that are currently being developed. To access these additional functions, a modification to the existing agreement with Dayforce is required. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? I believe first I need to move to waive second reading.
Please call the roll.
We already did that. I now move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White. President Harden.
Passed.
And thank you. Next is ordinance 3422-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Technology to enter into a 2-year revenue contract with the Franklin County Board of Commissioners for weekly media services provided by the City of Columbus Television Media Services Office, and to authorize the reimbursement of up to $125,903.10 by the Franklin County Board of Commissioners over a 2-year period to the City of Columbus for said services. As mentioned in the title, the Franklin County Board of Commissioners uses CTV for their weekly meetings and other broadcast needs. DOT, the Department of Technology, estimates that CTV will provide Franklin County Board of Commissioners approximately 365 hours of media service time per year at an hourly rate of $172.47 for 2025 and 2026. The terms of this revenue contract is 2 years, beginning on January 1, 2025, and ending December 31st, 2026. During this 2-year period, the City of Columbus will be reimbursed up to $125,903.10 for the 10 cent for the services provided. Seeing no questions or comments from my colleagues, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Dale, Coward, Dorans, Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thanks. Next we have ordinance 3451-2024 to authorize the Finance and Management Director to enter into a universal term contract for the portion, for the option to purchase Depositat OEM parts within Ecoverse LLC in accordance with the sole source provision of the Columbus City Code, and to authorize the expenditure of $1. As mentioned, this is ordinance establishes a universal term contract for the option to purchase parts from OEM parts with EcoServe LLC. These parts are for repair and maintenance within the compost processing equipment, and Ecoverse LLC is the sole source for these parts, as they are the only local distributor for the specific manufacturer. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Dale, Coward, Dorans, Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you, Council President. May I move to the Economic Development and Small Minority Business Committee?
Please, sir.
Thank you. Tonight, in the Economic Development and Small Minority Business Committee for second reading, we have ordinance 3371-2024 to amend the 2024 capital improvements budget to authorize the appropriation of funds within the income set-aside fund and the development taxable bond fund, to authorize the transfer of cash between the income tax set-aside subfund and the development taxable bond fund, to authorize the expenditure within the development taxable bond fund in an amount up to $13 million for the public improvements for the North Market project, to authorize the Director of the Department of Development to remit a portion of the public improvements grant to the Columbus-Franklin County Finance Authority for the North Market project pursuant to the cooperative agreement dated August 29th, 2023, and to declare an emergency. On July 24th, 2023, Council passed Ordinance 2135-2023, which established both an economic development agreement with the North Market Development Authority and a cooperative agreement with the Columbus-Franklin County Finance Authority for the North Market project. This ordinance simply authorizes a $13 million public improvement grant that is a portion of the city's approved overall commitment to the project. An emergency designation is requested since the payment per the agreement is due and is necessary for the improvement and expansion of the North Market per the signed agreement. I did want to take a second and have Director Jenkins just give us an update, just to, I think, to spell out what this was, that this is not simply an agreement payment, but there are also things that this council negotiated in good faith to make sure that we had in that agreement, one of them being minority participation on this very, very large project. So Director Jenkins, could you give us a status update as to where you are with working with the contractor on the North Market project?
Thank you, Councilmember Bangston, Council President Harden, council members. Currently, we are on track to hit our 30% spend at the completion of this project. We have about $22 million in potential spend with certified vendors with the City of Columbus. We are still looking to get certified vendors, so we're pushing hard against Gilbane to make sure that they get all their vendors certified, minority, women-owned businesses.
Thank you for that, Director, and I want to thank you and your team for staying on top of it. I know you've been having regular meetings with Gilbane and the development team over there to ensure that we are meeting those goals. In addition to those goals, affordable housing, public spaces, we're also a part of that, public infrastructure improvements as well. And so, again, want to thank you for keeping us abreast of that. Director Stevens, is there anything that you wanted to add before we move for passage?
Thank you, Chair Bankston, President Hart, and members of council. I just also want to highlight the fact that this was an investment in a city asset that really focuses on small and minority businesses. 60% of the vendors there are either small women or minority businesses. We're going to see over 50 units of affordable housing in addition to the housing that's being built on the site, as well as just the continued investment around our arena and our blanking on our convention center. So excited to see the progress of this work and look forward to the ribbon cutting.
Thank you for that, Director. Seeing no questions or comments from my colleagues, I move for passage.
Second.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Day Coward, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
And lastly, we have ordinance 3390-2024 to authorize the appropriation of funds within the income set-aside sub-fund and the development taxable bond fund to authorize the transfer of cash between the income tax set-aside sub-fund and the development taxable bond fund to authorize the expenditure within the development taxable bond fund in an amount up to $2,500,000 for a capital contribution agreement, which will provide facility renovations, which will further support the operational needs of the Franklin County Convention Facility, to authorize the Director of the Department of Development to enter into a capital contribution agreement with the Franklin County Convention Facility for facility renovations and to declare an emergency. In this year's capital budget, Council passed a $2.5 million appropriation to support infrastructural improvements for the Franklin County Convention Facility. Funds for a given year's capital budget typically are not made available until the auditor holds a bond sale for those projects in the spring the following year. Due to the emergency needs of these funds for our convention facilities, we are appropriating this capital expenditure early using our income tax set-aside sub-fund and will replenish this amount once the bond sale takes place next spring. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Day Coward, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you, Council President. That's all I have in my committee this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next committee to come before council is the Public Service and Transportation Committee, chaired by Councilmember Barosa de Padilla. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Council President. As a little holiday gift, we have a little show and tell. So today, we're taking an important step to make our streets safer. On the consent agenda, we have 6 ordinances that will lower speed limits on key streets across the city. Speed is the biggest factor in how severe a crash can be, especially for people walking or cycling. By lowering speed limits, we're following through on our Vision Zero action plan, which aims to eliminate traffic deaths and serious injuries by making our roads safer for everyone. So here's what we're changing. On the west side of Columbus, and I believe we have some visuals. On the west side of Columbus, Alton and Darby Creek Road, Fetter Road to Rainier Road from 55, this is an awesome visual, from 55 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. Also on the west side, Fetter Road from Alton and Darby Creek Road to Hilliard Rome Road from 45 miles to 40 miles. Also on the west side, Hague Avenue, north of Harrison Road to Traby Road from 45 miles to 40 miles. And on the south side, Lockbourne Road from Commerce Street to London Groveport Road from 55 miles to 45 miles. On the north side, on Sunbury Road from Holt Road to Ennis and McCutcheon, from 45 to 40 miles per hour, and then also north side on North High Street from Goodale to King Avenue from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour. These changes mean more consistent speed limits for drivers, reducing confusion and improving safety, especially on streets with a history of serious crashes or where people walk and bike. To make these changes, the city worked closely with the Franklin County Engineers Office and the Ohio Department of Transportation, or ODOT, to study and recommend the new speed limits. To reduce the speed limit, communities must perform engineering studies in coordination with ODOT. And for the first time, we're considering factors like the number of people walking and cycling when studying speed limits, not just cars. These actions were taken after hearing concerns from our residents. Your 311 calls, emails to our office, outreach to the city are important, and they do make a difference. These reduced speed limits will take effect 30 days after the hopeful passage of these ordinances today. By slowing things down, we're prioritizing safety and making, or by the passage of today, but we're slowing things down, we're prioritizing safety and making Columbus a better place to live, work, and get around. So with that, I do have one ordinance in Public Service and Transportation, Ordinance 2907, 2024, to appropriate funds within the General Government Grants Fund to authorize the Director of Public Service to enter into a professional services contract with Woolpert Incorporated for the Arterial Street Rehabilitation Williams Road Corridor, Scioto River to Southampton Road project, to authorize the expenditure up to $2,200,000 from the General Government Grants Fund and Streets and Highways Bond Fund, and to declare an emergency. The intent of this project is to provide the Department of Public Service additional resources for planning and preliminary engineering services and documenting them through a feasibility study, generally following ODOT report guidelines. This project will develop a plan for the Williams Road corridor on the south side with an emphasis on improving the corridor as an effective multimodal freight corridor. This project will also develop plans to separate 2 at-grade rail crossings and replace 1 grade separated rail crossing, in addition to completing the initial planning phase. This project is very exciting. It's a 2 to 3 year project that we will embark on, but this will bring some serious safety improvements along that Williams Road corridor. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
That's all for my committee this evening.
Next committee to come before council is the Neighborhood Recreation and Parks Committee, chaired by Councilmember Day Alcar. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight in my committee, we have Ordinance 3062-2024 to authorize the Director of Recreational Parks to enter into contract with Aggressive Mechanical Incorporated for HVAC upgrades, Adventure Center, and Cleo Demery project, to authorize the transfer of $750,000 within the Recreation Parks Voted Bond Fund, to authorize the amendment of the 2024 capital improvements budget, and to authorize the expenditure of $1 million from the Recreation and Parks Grant Fund and the Recreation and Parks Voted Bond Fund. This project is a continuation of department efforts to modernize end-of-life HVAC equipment throughout facilities in order to improve energy efficiency and user comfort. The scope includes controls upgrades at the Adventure Center in Franklin Park. It also includes replacement of the boiler and installation of low-speed, high-velocity fans at Cleo Demery Athletic Complex. $250,000 of this project will be funded by a U.S. Department of Energy grant from the state's Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio communities. This is Phase 1 of the project. Phases 2 and 3 will include similar upgrades at the following centers: Whetstone, Dodge, Bretnell, LM Industrial Drive Complex, Blackburn, Barrack, and BD. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you. The next ordinance in this committee is something my colleague, Councilmember Barosa de Padilla, has been working on, so I will now turn the floor over to my colleague.
Thanks, Councilmember. Ordinance 3501-2024 to authorize the city clerk to enter into a grant agreement with Advocates for Basic Legal Equality Incorporated, or ABLE, for the purpose of providing legal services for immigrant and refugee families in relation to the Columbus Families Together Fund, to authorize an appropriation and expenditure within the Public Safety Initiative Subfund, and to declare an emergency. Columbus City Council established a Columbus Families Together Fund in 2017 to protect immigrant and refugee families in Central Ohio from the long-term financial and emotional devastation that results from aggressive deportation. Council members Liz Brown and my colleague, Councilmember Favor, continued to fund this over the years. After receiving the CFTF, Keeping Families Together Fund grant in 2017, ABLE delivered legal information through 116 Know Your Rights presentations, reaching thousands of individuals and families. ABLE was also able to represent 190 Franklin County and Columbus residents through this funding. 30 of those cases are still open and receiving services. The Columbus Families Together Fund will provide $300,000 total over 3 years to ABLE to continue this programming through 2027. I'm honored to continue advocating for the Columbus Families Together Fund with the support of my colleagues. This fund and partnering organizations serve our immigrant and refugee communities, providing vital needs, including but not limited to assistance with family reunification applications, applications for visas, know your rights training sessions, and other essential needs for the community. There is no greater time than now, when there is uncertainty and fear in our community, to provide hope and critical legal representation that truly protects families. And similar, as we talked about with our legislation earlier, it is key and vital for these families to have legal representation to prevent the deportation process. That is a disruption not only to the families that it affects, but our entire communities. Councilmember Favor, is there anything that you would like to say?
I just want to say thank you for continuing this work. There is no more timely moment for the city to continue to demonstrate its values and its commitment to supporting immigrant and refugee families than right now. We're not going to skirt around the issue. We know that there are folks who are weaponizing this moment and playing fast and loose with people's lives. And this legislation has been important in supporting our immigrant and refugee families, providing them with the tools and the legal representation to navigate a very complicated immigration system. And so I'm grateful to you, Councilmember, for picking up the torch and helping to solidify our commitment to supporting all residents in Columbus.
Thank you, and I encourage folks that may be watching this at home, whether these are constituents that you represent or folks are seeing this. I know there's a lot of misinformation right now in the community. There's uncertainty because we're waiting on things that may be coming down. So we want to ensure that folks, if they do have questions, they can feel free to first reach out to our office. We will direct you in the right direction to ensure that families get accurate information. Our hope is that through continuing with this fund, that we will provide not only the critical legal services that folks need and that representation, but also ensuring that as there is continuing changing policies, they understand what that means, they understand what it means for them, and that they feel like their affairs are in order and that they have accurate information. So I want to thank all of my colleagues for your work. I want to thank you also for what is to come as we face very uncertain times in our community. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Dayal, Coward, Dorans, Favor, Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you, Councilmember. The floor is yours.
Thank you for your work on your leadership on this. It's really important. Next in committee, we have ordinance 3538-2024 to authorize the city clerk to enter into grant agreements with Family Mentoring Foundation, Gold Heart Outreach, and Mission Warmth for their services during the extreme winter months, to authorize an appropriation expenditure in the Neighborhood Initiative Subfund, to authorize the purchase of food and non-alcoholic beverages, and to declare an emergency. Councilmember Weich is the sponsor of this ordinance, and so I would like to hand the floor over to him to talk about the much-needed services this ordinance legislates.
Thank you, Chair. This funding, as well as funding for an ordinance in health, human service, and equity, was earmarked earlier this year for extreme weather response, and because only a small portion was used this summer, we were able to use this additional funding to fill in gaps in service. We heard from the advocates during our November council meeting, and these funds will go towards supporting members of our on-house community and aid them in accessing critical resources like food and transportation to shelter. By supplying these funds, these nonprofits will be able to continue to and expand their life-saving services they offer through the winter. The ordinance is designated as an emergency due to the importance of this work now and in the coming months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have two public speakers signed up to provide proponent testimony this evening. So first, I'd like to call up Joe Motiel. Welcome back to council. Please state your name, address, any organization you're associated with, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. President Harden, members of City Council, Joe Motel, 167 West Cook Road, Columbus. I first want to express my appreciation to Councilman Weiss for sponsoring this ordinance. For the last 2.5 years, I've been directly involved with several boots-on-the-ground organizations who advocate full-time for our homeless citizens. And what I found out is that these organizations and those who volunteer their free time, they are the ones who truly understand the needs and solutions that will help address our homeless crisis. And they are doing so with little or no help from our city and county tax dollars. The legislation recognizes, quote, there is a need in the community to provide extreme weather services to our unhoused, and that City Council and the administration are developing a plan to establish a protocol for future funding during extreme summer and winter and weather events, end of quote. I hope that happens soon. It's long overdue that y'all establish a city department that solely represents the needs of our unhoused residents and have it filled with homeless advocates who have a true passion and knowledge of what works and what doesn't. And please don't hire bureaucrats who just work for a paycheck. I'm tired of attending discussions and summits on our homeless crisis and listening to the same song and dance given by some of our city and county elected officials about all they've done and how much they care about this crisis. The Shelter Board, as you know, has finally completed a comprehensive assessment study with viable solutions. And of course, those solutions are going to cost more than what is currently being done because not enough has ever been done, and it's only going to get worse, as we all know. By not immediately implementing such solutions from this assessment will cost us even more in the long term. And as I've said numerous times, it's all about prioritizing and having the political willpower to move forward. So which one of you is going to prioritize and be the champion of our homeless crisis? The fact that ARP funds have basically disappeared is not an excuse to fund the solutions from the study. The $1.3 billion 2025 city budget calls for $5.9 million for our homeless. That is a meager 0.5% of the city's budget. Homeless nonprofits are asking the county to spend $19.8 million or 0.9% of its $2.2 billion 2025 budget. Franklin County officials have indicated that because our ARP funds have dried up, that this is too much money to ask for. And I hope you don't use the same excuse. Maybe county officials shouldn't have neglectfully used $34 million of ARP dollars to subsidize well-heeled developers of the North Market project and $3 million for the owners of the Clippers. The market project, for this market project, the city and county are providing $94 million in subsidies, along with a $34 million state tax credit, translates into a $128 million subsidy, or 30% of the cost of the project. The city and county provided $189 million, or 50.7% towards the Crew Stadium. Why? Because the homeless don't write campaign checks. In closing, county officials have spent $320,000 on unnecessary DEI trips. Mayor Ginther wasted $200,000 to go to Denmark, along with $195,000 city employee settlement for someone who was, quote, constructively terminated for calling into a question of the mayor's work practices and intertwining city and campaign workload and staff. All the while, the city continues to waste hundreds of thousands of dollars on paying contractors to engage in the counterproductive measure of sweeping camps and inappropriately pulling officers off the streets to assist in those, and they're more needed in our neighborhoods. So let's stop the sweeps, please. Los Angeles, I just want to say, on the other hand, they spent 10.9% of their $12.3 billion budget towards the homeless. I mean, granted, they do have the worst homeless population, highest in the country, but still 10.9% to address this. We can do better. We need to do better, or this isn't going to go away. So please look at that assessment, consider it. We got solutions, we got a plan. Let's get on the ball and get with it. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
For the additional time.
Do any of my colleagues have any questions? No? Thank you. I would now like to call up our second speaker, Emily Myers. Well, let the record show Emily Myers is not here. Do any of my colleagues have any other questions, comments? If not, then I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you, Council President. Can we now go back to page 4 of the agenda in first reading? Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 3433-2024 to authorize the city clerk to enter into a grant agreement with the Faith Thomas Foundation Incorporated to reimburse for expenses associated with the Red Diamond Gala and to authorize an appropriation expenditure within the Neighborhoods Initiative Subfund. The Red Diamond Gala helps to provide attendees a better understanding of the breakthroughs in medications and technology that can improve the quality of life of sickle cell patients, and it helps to raise funding for those who enter the hospital during a sickle cell crisis. The Red Diamond Gala hosted 180 attendees this year that were empowered to become committed and dedicated to become advocates that help to make changes in the sickle cell community throughout Franklin County. This funding will be used to reimburse the Faith Thomas Foundation for expenses incurred for execution of the Red Diamond Gala, including marketing expenses, event management costs, and rental of space and equipment. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you. And finally, this evening, we have ordinance 3434-2024 to authorize the city clerk to enter into a grant agreement with the United Way of Central Ohio Incorporated in support of the African American Leadership Academy and to authorize an appropriation expenditure within the Neighborhood Initiative Subfund. The African American Leadership Academy is a community-based leadership development program that expands the number of African American leaders excelling in their professions and engaging in community service throughout Central Ohio. Its mission is to increase the number of Central Ohio African American leaders and broaden the community's awareness of a wider collection of capable and civic-minded African-American professionals. AALA assembles a group of fellows who have the potential for significant accomplishments in both their careers and community. AALA selects individuals who are ready to grow professionally and have a passion for helping the community overcome obstacles and thrive. To sustain expanded programming in 2025, after growing from 20 to 40 fellows per year, additional funds are needed. The AALA is still receiving 4 to 5 times the number of applicants to available spots. Sustaining the second cohort per year model will greatly contribute to meeting more of this growing demand. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll by voice.
Mr. Bangston? Yes. Ms. Barosa de Padilla? Ms. de Alcauer?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans?
Yes.
Ms. Favor? Yes. Ms. Green? Yes. Mr. Remy? Yes. Mr. White? Yes. President Harden.
Ordinance passed.
Thank you. That's all I have today.
Next committee to come before council is the Workforce Education and Labor Committee, chaired by Pres Pro Tem. Pres Pro Tem, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. Today we have ordinance 3522-2024 to authorize the city auditor to establish an encumbrance of the payment of contract services with Columbus Area Learning Centers, to authorize expenditure of $3,061,735 from the general fund, to authorize the payment of prior expenditures related to contract services, and declare an emergency. This legislation authorizes an encumbrance of $3,061,735 related to a previously established operations agreement with the Columbus Early Learning Centers. CELC is a local nonprofit that provides pre-K, kindergarten education and related programming to the city-owned Hilltop Early Learning Center. The Hilltop Early Learning Center includes a state-of-the-art healthcare facility, food security resources, counseling, and more, all in one location at no cost for most Hilltop families. The operations agreement contains an initial 1-year term with 2 automatic and annual renewals. The legislation needs to provide funding for the existing operation agreement for its second and final annual renewal for the period of September 1st, 2024 through August 31st, 2025. Do my colleagues have questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you, Council President. That's all I have in my committees this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next committee to come before council is the Housing, Homelessness, and Building Committee, chaired by Councilmember Favor. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Harden. Tonight, we have ordinance 3231-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Development to modify a subrecipient agreement with Community Mediation Services to add additional funds in an amount up to $175,000 and to extend the end date of the agreement from December 31st, 2024 to September 30th, 2025 to continue to provide housing stability services to qualified residents as well as provide mediation services to tenants and landlords for tenants facing an eviction and to declare an emergency. We're continuing our support for crucial housing stability services provided by Community Mediation Services, a valuable organization that works tirelessly to help residents overcome barriers to maintaining their housing. They play a vital role in our community by offering resources, guidance, and advocacy for individuals and families facing housing challenges. One of the most critical aspects of their work is direct intervention in eviction cases. Community Mediation Services works on-site at eviction court and in their offices, providing mediation services and support to tenants and landlords to help them find common ground and avoid eviction whenever possible. This helps prevent homelessness and the devastating consequences that come with it. The increased investment will allow them to expand their reach and provide even more support to those facing housing instability. Their services are essential in helping individuals and families navigate complex situations, understand their rights, and access available resources. Are there any questions or comments by my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor, Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have ordinance 3292-2024 to authorize the Director of Department of Development to enter into a not-for-profit service contract with the Broad Street Presbyterian Church of Columbus, Ohio, to create a fund and provide fiscal manager services for residents appealing eviction cases in an amount up to $55,500, to authorize the appropriation and expenditure of up to $55,500 from the Neighborhood Economic Development Fund to advance funding per a predetermined schedule and to declare an emergency. This legislation aims to help level the playing field for low-income tenants facing eviction in our community. We're partnering with the Broad Street Presbyterian Church of Columbus, Ohio, to create a new fund specifically to help tenants access legal representation and appeal eviction cases. Many tenants facing eviction struggle to afford legal assistance, and even when they can access legal aid, they often hit a roadblock when it comes to appealing a court decision. Appeals sometimes require tenants to post a bond, a financial barrier that can prevent them from pursuing their case further. This ordinance will create a $50,000 fund to help eligible low-income tenants pay for these bonds, ensuring that they have opportunity to have their cases fully reviewed and decided on their merits. This initiative is a critical step towards ensuring that all residents, regardless of income, have access to fair and equitable legal representation in eviction proceedings. By removing financial barriers to appeals, we're helping to prevent unjust evictions and keep families in their homes. Are there any questions or comments by my colleagues? Seeing none, I'd move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor, Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you. That's all I have in my committees forever. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Council President. Tonight in our Health, Human Services, and Equity Committee, we have 5 ordinances on second reading. The first one is Ordinance 3386-2024 to authorize the Board of Health to enter into a contract with Tape Central Inc., DBA Central Ohio Audio Video for AV equipment and installation services, to waive the bidding requirements of City Code 329, to authorize an expenditure from the Health Department's grant fund to pay the cost thereof, and to declare an emergency. All CPH employees and City of Columbus residents that attend trainings, seminars, and meetings in the Columbus Public Health Auditorium will benefit from this contract. Emergency action is being requested in order to meet grant data modernization deliverables by not delaying the start of the contract. Any delay could result in reimbursement for services not being allowed per the grantor. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor, Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you very much. The second ordinance we have tonight is Ordinance 3391-2024 to authorize the Executive Director of the Office of Celebrate One to accept a grant from the Department of Health and Human Services and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention through the Ohio Department of Health for the Ohio Health Improvement Zones project in the amount of $156,000 to authorize the appropriation of $156,000 from the unappropriated balance of the General Government Grants Fund to authorize the Executive Director of the Office of Celebrate One to expend and enter into contract for community engagement and outreach services with multiple community partner subgrantees for the amounts previously stated that total $235,000 to waive the competitive bidding requirements of Columbus City Code and to declare an emergency. The Ohio Health Improvement Zones pilot project will work to improve infant mortality in this area by addressing health care access and quality, as well as the social community context. Celebrate One is committed to developing and designing a connected and consistent care experience for mothers, babies, and families, utilizing public-private partnerships to implement safe, place-based, culturally appropriate resource centers to enhance access to health care and promote healthy behaviors, reduce racial disparities and infant mortality, and set families up to thrive. Emergency action is being requested this time in order to meet the project timelines and deliverables. And the target area represents Columbus's Eastland and Blacklick Estates neighborhoods within the 43232 zip codes. Are there any comments or questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you. Our third ordinance tonight is Ordinance 3401-2024 to authorize and direct the Board of Health to modify an existing contract with Laboratory Corporation of America Holdings for increased laboratory testing services for the Ben Franklin Tuberculosis TB Clinic, Sexual Health and Wellness Center, and Alcohol and Drug Services Program for the period of February 1st, 2024 through March 31st of 2025, to waive the competitive bidding provisions of Columbus City Codes, to authorize the expenditure not to exceed $24,450 from the Health Department Grant Fund, and to declare an emergency. This contract serves the Ben Franklin Tuberculosis Clinic, Women's Health and Sexual Health and Wellness Center, and the Alcohol and Drug Program at Columbus Public Health. For 2024, LabCorp has completed 3,722 tests thus far, which is an average about 335 tests per month. These clients will be served by providing testing for drugs of abuse to aid in treatment, providing TB testing and management of TB disease, diagnosis, and managing gynecological and urologic concerns, STI testing and treatment, HIV prep, and annual pap smears and HPV testing. The ordinance is submitted as an emergency as there's an immediate need to continue lab testing services with LabCorp. A disruption to those services could be harmful to current patients according to medical treatment standards, which could increase the risk of infectious disease transmission and disrupt harm reduction efforts throughout Franklin County. Are there any comments and questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Our fourth ordinance tonight is Ordinance 3456-2024 to authorize and direct the Board of Health to accept a grant from the Franklin County Board of Commissioners in the amount of $2,600,000 for the fiscal year 25 Ben Franklin Tuberculosis Program, to authorize the appropriation of $2,600,000 and any additional funds from the unappropriated balance of the Health Department grants funds, and to declare an emergency. Activities funded through this agreement focus on persons confirmed with or suspected of having TB disease, newly arriving immigrants with TB conditions, high-risk contacts to TB cases, persons living or working in nursing homes, jails, homeless shelters, and school-aged children at high risk of TB infection and disease progression. CPH serves as the local authority for all aspects of TB surveillance and reporting, medical management, and prevention control, not just in Columbus, but all throughout Franklin County. This ordinance is submitted as an emergency to continue the support and monitoring of TB cases, which prevents the spread of infectious disease, for the immediate preservation of public health, safety, and welfare, and to avoid forfeiture of this grant opportunity. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
And our final ordinance on second reading tonight is ordinance 3550-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Development to enter into a grant agreement with the Community Shelter Board, or CSB, in the amount not to exceed $300,000 to provide operational funding for the purpose of supporting extreme weather services, to authorize an appropriation and expenditure of $300,000 within the Neighborhoods Initiative subfund, to authorize the purchase of food and non-alcoholic beverages, to allow for advance payments on a predetermined schedule, to allow for the reimbursement of expenses incurred prior to the PO, and to declare an emergency. At this time, I'd like to pass the floor to my colleague, Councilmember White, who is sponsoring this ordinance.
Thank you, Chair. Over the last few years, this council and the Community Shelter Board have created a foundational infrastructure for winter weather supports for our unhoused community, and new leadership at CSB has strengthened and expanded this work over the last winter. However, we realize there's still room for improvement and further expansion. These dollars will give CSB the ability to open more beds that support individuals with pets, partner with additional community partners, and continue to fill gaps in services. While meetings have been taking place on the best use of these funds since this summer, winter is here and the code won't wait, so we are ordaining these funds on emergency. This funding will act as an emergency Band-Aid while we continue working with the administration on redeveloping and enhancing the city's long-term emergency preparedness plan for extreme weather events. To speak on this ordinance tonight, we have Steve Skavinsky from the Community Shelter Board. Steve, welcome back to council, and my apologies if I butchered your last name, but appreciate you being here.
Good evening, Council President Harden, Pro Tem Dorans, and Chair Green, and distinguished members of City Council. Thank you so much. Just want to say that Community Shelter Board is very, very grateful and honored to receive this money to provide to the community members who are most vulnerable during the severe weather. We are 2 weeks into the warming centers now, and we're already seeing strong interest with couples, people with pets. This is absolutely starting to fill some of those gaps that we have in the community. We are honored to partner with the city, the county, community partners, community members, and advocates to get people inside and get them safe during the most severe weather. 2 of the warming centers have been at or near capacity, but there's still room at 2 of the other warming centers, and we'll continue to expand as we need to and make sure that everyone is kept safe this winter, whether it's in the traditional emergency shelter or in the new warming centers. At Community Shelter Board, our mission is simple yet profound, and it's to make sure everyone has a safe place to call home in Columbus and Franklin County. We are established in 1986, and we operate with that vision every day that everyone should have a safe place to be, to live, to sleep, and to call home. No one should be homeless even for one night. Through our crisis response system and during the winter, we contract with 19 partners, incredible agencies, and community partners and leaders to deliver a broad range of services, including diversion, coordinated entry, homeless prevention, emergency shelter, street outreach, rapid rehousing, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing. This funding is going to be vital to continue to provide those essential services, particularly during this time of year when there's high demand for the warming centers. These centers also collaborate with community leaders, faith communities, businesses, and really work towards organizing a strategy of community-based shelters that really engage new partners and new communities. It's going to be vital during the winter to prevent hypothermia, frostbite, and loss of life. Currently, contracted partners are operating 4 overnight warming centers, some of which accommodate pets, all of which are co-ed. We want to ensure that families are not separated from their companions who have been outside with them during these challenging times. So this funding is going to allow us to continue to reimagine shelter and come up with models that will really best meet the needs of the community. We'll continue to support people with pets and couples in need of shelter, keeping everyone together. We'll meet the growing needs of people we serve, including additional meals, additional food and supplies for cats and dogs in the warming centers. And I should note, the first night we were open, we had a cat with 6 kittens. So someone came in from an encampment with their pets. We're going to continue to work with Leadership Columbus, where we're identifying and implementing the best practices for co-sheltering with individuals and their pets. We're going to expand partnerships for organizations serving youth in our neighborhoods who are in need and experiencing homelessness, and we're going to expand the partnerships for transportation so that we can get folks from the encampments into emergency shelter and the warming centers. So all of this support is so critical, and we're especially grateful to Council President Hardin, to Councilmember Weish for your leadership and your commitment to this. We really appreciate it. I do want to also finally express our thanks to Councilmember Favor for all of your years of service, dedication, support, and working for the most vulnerable in the community. So we're very appreciative of that. In closing, I just want to stress that Community Shelter Board is committed to providing the safest options, and really I think the next step is going to be safe shelter, and the next step is then working on housing as permanent solutions for people in the community who are unsheltered. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
I think we're good. Steve,
Okay.
thank you for being here, and appreciate all the work that you do for CSB and what CSB does for our community. It is appreciated by this council, so thank you.
Thank you much.
And Chair, I will kick it back to you.
Wonderful. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you so much. And now, Council President and Clerk, if I could please request that we go back to page 4 of the agenda to the first reading section under the Health, Human Services, and Equity Committee for Ordinance 3385-2024 to authorize the Board of Health to modify an existing contract with Sapna Welsh DBA Leverage HR to authorize an expenditure from the Health Department's grant fund to pay the cost thereof. This ordinance just modifies a contract with Sapna Welch to provide additional emotional intelligence training for CPH staff to enhance self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and effective communication skills. The contract period was originally set to end on April 30th of 2025, and this modification will extend the contract period through December 30th of 2025 and will allow for the training of up to 500 CPH staff members. Were there any comments or questions for my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you, Council President. That's all for me.
Next committee to come before council is the Public Safety and Criminal Justice Committee, chaired by Councilmember Remy. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Council President. Tonight I have Ordinance 2994-2024 to authorize the city attorney to modify an existing contract with Isaac Wiles and Burkholder, LLC, for outside legal counsel service for the case of Shaw versus Wozniak et al. 223 CV 00942, pending in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Ohio, to authorize the expenditure of $57,200 from the general fund and to declare an emergency. Deputy Chief of Staff Melanie Tobias, could you provide a little bit more background on this additional funding?
Yes, thank you, Chair Remy, members of council. The City Attorney's Office has engaged the services of Isaac Wiles to represent the city in a lawsuit filed by 3 former Columbus Division of Police officers. This litigation is sprawling, having spanned 18 months at this point, and involves extensive deposition practice as we approach a trial date scheduled in January. This contract modification allows for payment of continued legal services provided by Isaac Wiles in their representation of city in the lawsuit.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Next, I have Ordinance 3353-2024 to authorize the Director of Department of Public Safety to enter into an agreement with Public Consulting Group, LLC, for services related to the development of an ambulance supplemental payment program to waive the competitive bidding provisions of the Columbus City Code, Section 329, and to declare an emergency. I'm going to turn the floor over to Deputy Director George Speaks, since he's worked so hard on this, to explain a little bit more about the legislation and give us the background and explain the waiver of competitive bidding. Director.
Thank you, President Hardin, Chairman Remy, and members of council. We are very excited about this as it's a new possible revenue source for the city of Columbus and other political subdivisions throughout Ohio that undergo ambulance transportation through their fire or other EMS services. Governor DeWine last year signed House Bill 33, which requires the Ohio Department of Medicaid to implement this new program. The crux of it is simply that ambulance providers would receive monies to pay for their actual expenses for Medicaid patients. The accounting for this is very complex, and the ordinance for you tonight seeks to hire the vendor PCG to develop and submit these accounting forms on behalf of the city. We asked for this bid waiver and to hire PCG because they are the nation's foremost expert in this Medicare accounting niche. Secondly, they have been working with the state of Ohio to promulgate rules regarding the administration of this program. Third, PCG was retained several years ago by the Columbus Division of Fire to do a EMS year-long expense report that was mandated by the federal government. Therefore, this vendor is very familiar with both our structure and our expenses. And last, we have negotiated one of the best contracts in the country with PCG for them to perform this service on our behalf. For these reasons, and for a number of years we've been working on this, we respectfully recommend bid waiver and passage of this potential new revenue source.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Next, I have ordinance 3356, 2024, to authorize and direct the municipal court clerk to enter into contract with Ohio State University, OARNet, for the provision of VMware software licenses and maintenance services to waive the competitive bidding provisions of the Columbus City Code, to authorize an expenditure of $12,572.80 for the municipal court clerk computer fund, and to declare an emergency. This legislation authorized the Franklin County Municipal Court Clerk to enter into the first year of a 5-year contract with Ohio State University Ohio Academic Resource Network for the provision of virtual machineware software licenses and maintenance services for the Municipal Court Clerk's office. VMware licenses are necessary for the operation and management of our virtualized IT infrastructure. This infrastructure allows the Municipal Court Clerk's office to consolidate multiple physical servers into fewer, more powerful virtual servers, improving efficiency, reducing costs, and enhancing flexibility. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Next, I have ordinance 3369, 2024, to amend the 2024 capital improvement budget to authorize the transfer of funds within the Safety Geo Bonds Fund, Fund 7701, to authorize the Director of the Department of Public Safety to enter into an agreement with Tri-County Tower LLC for removal of an existing radio tower and design and construction of a new radio tower, to waive the competitive bidding provisions of the Columbus City Code, to authorize the expenditure of $373,224.30 from the Safety Geo Bond Fund, and to declare an emergency. This ordinance authorizes the Director of the Department of Public Safety to enter into an agreement with Tri-County Tower for removal, decommissioning, and disposal of an existing radio tower and design and construction of a new tower on property owned by the City of Columbus at 6502 East Broad Street. The Department of Public Safety currently has a radio tower mounted on top of a water tank at 6502 East Broad. The Department of Public Utilities Division of Water plans to repaint the tower in 2025. The Department of Public Safety will be required to remove the radio tower from atop the water tank as part of this planned project. When comparing costs of running a temporary radio tower and eventually mounting the existing tower back on the water tank versus constructing a new radio tower, the Department of Public Safety determined that it will be more cost-effective in the long run to construct a new radio tower. The radio tower is part of the Division of Support Services Telecommunications Network, which provides critical 800 megahertz communication services through the City of Columbus for public safety forces. Deputy Director speaks. Could you speak to the waiver of competitive bidding, please?
Absolutely. Due to the critical nature of this tower, we expedited the bids. I'm pleased to see that this vendor came in not only the cheapest, but they have immediate availability to construct the new tower. That is the recommendation in order to expedite this project.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Next, I have ordinance 3471, 2024, to authorize the Director of the Office of Violence Prevention to enter into contract with the Saunders Company, LLC, and Canvas Consulting, LLC, for community outreach, education, and engagement activities related to violence prevention, to authorize the Director of Office of Violence Prevention to establish purchase orders for labor, material, supplies, services, and/or professional services in conjunction with necessary programmatic needs, to waive the competitive bidding provision of the Columbus City Code, to authorize the transfer of $35,000 within the general fund, to authorize the expenditure of $220,000 from the general fund, and to declare an emergency. Both the Saunders Company and Canvas Consulting have experience in creating campaigns that target the unique demographic disproportionately impacted by community violence. It is therefore necessary to engage these companies, as their competencies and understanding of the impacted communities will help ensure the creation of a campaign that will connect with this community in order for the campaign to be impactful and effective. In addition to direct consulting services, this ordinance also seeks authorization to encumber funding for various ancillary needs, such as advertising, merchandise, community events, and other related campaign costs. Finally, this ordinance authorizes a consulting and advisory services contract for violence intermediation, public safety, and gang intervention. These services are needed to inform and advise the continued build-out of the Columbus Violence Intervention Program. Executive Director Rena Shack, if you would like to speak to the ordinance and explain the waiver of competitive bidding, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair Remy. President Harden, a part of the charge of the Office of Violence Prevention is to educate the community on violence and violence prevention. We are the bridge between the city and its residents on violence reduction initiatives. With a communication staff of 1 and a city of nearly 1 million residents, we are in need of the services in this contract to assist us in spreading awareness throughout the community, as well as assist us in facilitating events and conversations regarding conflict resolution, de-escalation techniques, relationship navigation, resource provision, etc. The companies in this ordinance have the proven and specific experience needed to create an education campaign that addresses the specific demographic disproportionately impacted by community violence, which is those at risk of becoming a perpetrator and/or victim of gun violence. It is necessary to use companies that understand this particular demographic, have done work in this space, and can create a targeted campaign that will connect with both youth and adults in order to maximize its impact in reducing gun violence in Columbus.
Thank you very much, Executive Director Shack. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you, Council President. That is all I have in public safety and criminal justice this evening. Have a very safe and happy holiday.
Final committee to come before council is the Public Utilities and Sustainability Committee, chaired by Councilmember White. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight in Public Utilities and Sustainability, I have 3139-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Public Utilities to enter into a construction contract with Cellhorse Equipment Services, LLC, for the Jackson Pike Wastewater Treatment Plant Sludge Concentration Building Demolition Project, to waive the procurement requirements of Columbus City Code, to authorize an amendment to the 2024 capital improvement budget, to make this ordinance contingent upon the Ohio Water Development Authority approving a loan for this project, to authorize the appropriation of funds within the sanitary revolving loan fund, and to authorize the expenditure of $2,219,600 from the sanitary revolving loan fund and the sanitary bond fund to pay for the project. This project will remove abandoned sludge concentration tanks in building sections not in use, in addition to repair parts of the roof and other structural problems to stabilize the building. Procurement requirements were waived, as there is only one bidder for the contract. Let me pause there, see if any questions or comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcauer, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Next, I have Ordinance 3267-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Public Utilities to enter into a construction contract with Kokosing Industrial Incorporated for the fourth water plant site preparation project, to amend the 2024 capital improvement budget, to authorize the appropriation and expenditure of $107,626,136.01 from the Water Supply Revolving Loan Account Fund for the contract, to make this ordinance contingent upon the approval of a loan obtained through the Water Supply Revolving Loan Account Program, to authorize the transfer of cash and appropriations within the Water Bond Fund, and to authorize the expenditure of $2,000 from the Water Bond Fund to pay for prevailing wage. The purpose of this project is to get the site ready for the fourth water plant to be constructed by demolishing existing building and geologic features, rock excavation, and installation of stormwater utilities and electricity. Let me pause there, see if any questions or comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Next, I have 3277-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Public Utilities to enter into a contract modification with EMA Incorporated for the automatic meter reading project, to authorize an amendment to the 2024 capital improvement budget, to authorize a transfer of cash and appropriation between projects within the Water Bond Fund, and to authorize an expenditure of $1,200,000 from the Water Bond Fund for this contract modification. The purpose of the automatic meter reading project is to implement enhanced metering systems for water and electrical meters to give Columbus residents more accurate reading of their consumption to verify utility bills. The original contract was bid in 2015, and due to the volume of meters for this project, an increase in funds is necessary to continue the work. Let me pause there, see if any questions or comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Council President, may I go back to page 4 to first readings in public utilities and sustainability?
Please.
First, I have 3284-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Public Utilities to modify and increase the contract with Accenture LLP for the professional construction management Services Number 2 project, to authorize an amendment to the 2024 capital improvement budget, to authorize the transfer of cash and appropriations between projects in the sanitary bond fund, and to authorize an expenditure of up to $510,945.65 within the sanitary bond fund to pay for the contract modification. Due to complications arising on the Jackson Pike wastewater treatment plant facilities cogeneration construction project, the construction contract for the cogeneration project must be extended for a significant time frame. The professional construction management services Number 2 project contract includes construction inspection, construction coordination, reporting, budgeting, scheduling, document tracking, and related tasks. Let me pause there, see if any questions or comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Next, I have 3291-2024 to authorize the Director of Public Utilities to enter into a contract renewal for professional engineering services with Hatch Associates Consultants Incorporated for the Department of Sewerage and Drainage Stormwater Pump Stations Evaluation Upgrade Program Project, to appropriate funds in the Storm Freshwater Market Rate Fund, to make this ordinance contingent upon the Ohio Water Development Authority approving a loan for this project, and to authorize an expenditure of up to $300,000 from the Storm Freshwater Market Rate Fund to pay for the contract renewal. This project provides for a holistic evaluation of each pump station, assessing their structural, mechanical process, electrical and other components, identifying needs and improvements, and identifying risk and safety issues. The evaluation and assessment for each pump station will be summarized into technical memorandum. The recommended improvements listed in the technical memorandums will be refined into improvement plans that will be used by the city to systematically upgrade the pump stations. Let me pause there, see if any questions or comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Next, I have 3309-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Public Utilities to modify the contract with J&D Home Improvements LLC, doing business as the basement doctor for the Blueprint Volunteer Sump Pump 2022 project, to authorize an amendment to the 2024 capital improvement budget, to transfer cash and appropriation between projects within the sanitary bond fund, to authorize an expenditure of $1 million from the sanitary bond fund to pay for the contract modification. This project is one of 4 main pillars of the Blueprint project. It consists of residents volunteering for installation of sump pumps in their homes to reduce excess stormwater entering the city's sanitary sewer system. The sump pumps redirect foundation drain away from the sanitary lateral to the sump pit. This contract covers properties throughout the city of Columbus, blueprint areas including but not limited to Clintonville, Hilltop, Miller-Kelton, Linden, James, Livingston, and Old Beachwold. Let me pause there, see if any questions or comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you. Next, I have 3319-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Public Utilities to enter into a design contract with Ribway Engineering Group Incorporated for the West Franklinton Area Sewer Reconfiguration Project, to authorize an amendment to the 2024 capital improvement budget to appropriate funds within the Sanitary Freshwater Market Rate Fund, to make this ordinance contingent upon the Ohio Water Development Authority approving a loan for this project, and to authorize an expenditure of $219,939.69 from the Sanitary Freshwater Market Rate Fund. This project includes removing existing sewers and reinstalling with modified sizings or elevations. This project will be fully designed with this contract and will not include future design phases. The project will take place on South Central Avenue near the intersections of West State Street and along West Town Street from South Central Avenue to Berline Avenue. Let me pause there, see if any questions or comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you. Next, I have 3346-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Finance and Management to associate all general budget reservations resulting from this ordinance with the appropriate universal term contract purchase agreement with the Henry P. Thompson Company, LLC, for the purchase of Fairbanks Morse pump parts and service for the rehabilitation and replacement of pumps at the HAP Cremine Water Plant, to authorize the Department of Public Utilities to purchase more than $100,000 in a fiscal year from the universal term contract for Fairbanks Morris pump parts and service, to authorize an amendment to the 2024 capital improvement budget, to authorize a transfer of cash and appropriation within the Water Bond Fund, and to authorize an expenditure of $250,000 from the Water Bond Fund. This contract will allow the rehabilitation and replacement of various pumps at the Hap Cremine Water Plant. Let me pause there, see if there are any questions or comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you. Next, I have 3354-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Public Utilities to modify and increase the contract funding with Resource International Incorporated and Corda Nemeth Engineering Incorporated for the Department of Public Utilities General Engineering Services Storm and Sanitary 2022 project, to authorize an amendment to the 2024 capital improvement budget, to authorize the transfer of funds and appropriation between projects in the Storm Sewer Bond Fund and the Sanitary Bond Fund, and to authorize an expenditure of up to $1 million within the Storm Sewer Bond Fund and Sanitary Bond Fund to pay for the contract modification. The General Engineering Services contract will provide engineering services for sanitary and storm system improvements and rehabilitation that warrant immediate action. These general engineering services may include field surveys, design reports, drawings, easements, permitting, record plans, independent review, public outreach, cleaning, and televising sewers, manhole inspections, geotechnical investigations, and other supplemental services. Let me pause there, see if any questions or comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you. Next, I have 3380-2024 to authorize the Director of Public Utilities to enter into an agreement with Thomas Scientific, LLC, for drinking water pitchers for the Division of Water, to authorize the transfer of $92,260 between object classes in the Water Operating Fund, and to authorize an expenditure of $92,260 within the Water Operating Fund. This will provide 2,800 new, unused, and the most current model drinking water pitcher filters to customers after replacing a lead service line to comply with Ohio EPA rules. Let me pause there, see if any questions or comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you. And lastly, I have 3467-2024 to authorize the Director of the Department of Public Utilities to renew a contract with Reftelis Financial Consultants Incorporated for general financial services and to authorize expenditure of $250,000 split among the electricity, water, sanitary sewer, and stormwater operating funds. The consultant will continue helping with cost of service study updates, cost allocation plans, user fee studies, financial research, and more. They will review all fees and charges and recommend changes based on the cost of service results or other calculations and recommend the implementation of new fees if appropriate. These fees and charges may include meter service fees, system capacity fees, backflow fees, tampering theft fees, front footage connection charges, and other permit fees. This renewal, year 3 of the contract, will be funded at $250,000 for a contract total of $620,000. Let me stop there, see if any questions or comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Thank you. That is all I have from my committee this evening.
Yes. Seeing no further business coming for council, have a happy holidays. See our colleagues next year. Thank you so much for your service, council member. Thank you, Mike Brown, as your final meeting. With that, I move to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, de Alcala, Dorans, Favor Green, Remy White, President Harden.
Meeting is adjourned.